Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the Planning Board this evening. Thanks for taking the time out of your life to be here. Always appreciate people showing up for this. We have a few orders of business for us before we start the entire process at this point, so if you just bear with us for a few moments, we'll get the ball underway here. Great. All right, so board members, you have an agenda before you at this point, unless there's any changes.
Move approval. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. You have minutes. The minutes from the 14th and the 24th are being requested to be held over to the 21st of February. So there's one set of minutes that I'd like you to be able to vote on tonight, which is for January 30th. Are there any errors, omissions, or changes that need to take place at this time? If not, I'd take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. You have 3 A&Rs before you at this point. Is there a wish to isolate anything out for discussion? If not, you have the recommendations of staff.
Move approval.
All right, so motion's made and seconded for endorsing the plans. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. You have one request for a tertiary dwelling unit. Is there anything you'd like to discuss on that? If
Mr.
not-
Chair?
Yes, please.
I'd like to be recused. It's
Duly
client.
noted. No problem. Mr. Dell's going to recuse. So board members, any questions, comments? You have your recommendations again. Okay.
With the conditions in the staff report. The
And that's a
Second.
second. Okay. Motion's made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously, and that's a 3-0 vote with Mr. Trudell recused. Okay, thanks. Under previous plans, which is 0507, the MCD is amended. Mr. Cohen asked if we could just hold that back for a few minutes. He's tied into another meeting, but as promised, he'll be with us shortly. So that's going to bring us to 8013, which is Meadows 2 Workforce Rental Community Definitive Subdivision. They are looking for Form J release. Leslie, is there anything you want to?
No, Mr. Chairman, on file number 8013, which is Meadows 2, 8024 Sandpiper 1, and 8025 Sandpiper 2. This is their first request for lot releases. We've had a lot of inspections and weekly meetings with our engineer, our staff, and their team, and they're making a lot of progress there. We recommend release of the Form J.
Move approval.
second.
That motion's made and seconded. Do you want to do 8013, 8024, and 8025, as Leslie brought up all at the same time? Are you good with that, everyone?
Sure.
Okay, so that motion's for all 3 of those, and that was seconded. Discussion on the issue? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. And that's going to bring us to 4016, which is Meadows 2 Multifamily Workforce Rental Community Development Project on 20 Dapkin. Leslie, you had something you wanted to add on this, correct?
No, Mr. Chairman, on this
I'm sorry.
one, the next one, 5316 Sandpiper 1 and 5416 Sandpiper 2, they are requesting a 1-year extension. They're well within the normal requirement for activating their permit. However, these 3 permits had a specific condition that were tied to starting the foundation work. So that's a bit unusual. And they've certainly started other work at the site. So we would recommend the 1-year extension as requested.
Board members, do you want to take all 3 of these together again?
I have a question. If that's
Please, no.
Leslie, is this going to affect eligibility for SHI-list listing?
No, usually a special permit is good for 2 years. That's now been changed to 3 years. And during that time frame, That's when they have to start the project. In these particular permits, we had a condition in the decision that said their vested rights started when the foundations are poured. So it's just a quirk of these decisions. So it doesn't really affect the overall time frame or anything else.
I'm sorry if I'm not fully
please, go ahead.
clear on that. So if they've already started work, they've already got a building permit?
They do not have a building permit yet. They recently filed a permit to go to the Building Code Appeals Board for the multifamily units to get a waiver from some building code requirements, but I think those permits are in the works. Maybe Dave Arminetti could expand on that.
Mr. Arminetti, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, staff, and neighbors. Dave Arminetti, Richmond Great Point Development. The question about timing and shy list eligibility, none of these decisions affect the eligibility per se. We're doing everything we can to continue to proceed hand in glove with your staff, not just the planning staff, but Tucker Holland, the housing staff, town council. Vicky Marsh has been intimately involved in the last few months, along with Attorney Giorgio, in finalizing the applications to the state, which have to be reviewed and approved at their staff level, at a ministerial level. There are no public hearings, but by the Department of Housing and Community Development. Once that paperwork is approved, which we expect within the next couple of weeks, the units will be eligible. Then what it will take for the town to apply for safe harbor, which is the key issue that everybody's focused on at this point, will be the issuance of building permits, most notably for our Meadows 2 Apartments project. We've applied for building permits for the purposes of being rejected for the application of impact-resistant glazing for the entire project, which I believe the board's aware is an issue that's kind of island-wide now. There's some evolution in the building code about those requirements, and they haven't flowed through yet to apartment buildings. They've only been modified as relates to single-family homes. So technically, even though the former building commissioners and the current building commissioner are empathetic about the situation and would like to grant local waivers, they're prevented statutorily from granting a waiver for anything related to fire, life safety, and structural requirements, and this falls under structural. So we have to go to the State Building Board of Appeals, which is a board that granted that same request for our Meadows 1 apartments 2.5 years ago. We've gone through and been granted the first set of waivers for the first 16 of those units as of about 2 weeks ago. We're just waiting for the written decision to come in the mail, and we're continuing to put those through the process. Unfortunately, their board is structured where they only have 3 or 4 available agenda items a month, so they have to take our project in kind of bite-sized pieces. We expect to apply for foundation building permits for the first 16 units now that we have that waiver in hand within a matter of days. My understanding is the building department is, in addition to the normal seasonality, much more streamlined and efficient at the moment, and those building permits should be issued, I think, within a matter of a couple of weeks. And then the next set of building permit applications will follow through every couple of weeks until we get the entire 98 units in. If I had to take a real guess as to when we would get the first 48 building permits issued, which is the first step that I think the town would like to take to get the initial safe harbor, we're probably talking maybe another 2 months, shouldn't be any longer than that. Our target in our efforts in the last few months with these evolutionary steps with the select board, where we renegotiated the MOU and agreed to some more affordable units, which the board will discuss a little later this evening. Our target was to at least have those first 48 units, if not issued, very close to being issued by about town meeting of this year, and we're still on target for that.
So
I know it's a little complicated answer, but there are a number of steps that
was
are
a very,
different parties.
very helpful answer. Thank you. If you don't mind, a couple more follow-ups.
Sure.
So there's, you said there's 48 that are kind of in the pipeline, apart from the ones we're talking about tonight, right?
Well, tonight we're talking about the entirety of the project in some instances, which is 225 apartment units and 94 single-family homes. The single-family home building permits will kind of trickle in 1 or 2 at a time. The apartment building permits are what everyone's focused on for the purposes of shy list eligibility, because those come, in one big swoop. And that's what will get the town safe harbor under Chapter 40B. And the key number there is the first 48 units. Once building permits are issued for 48 units, the town can then petition the state and get 1 year's short-term safe harbor. The next 48 units comes, they can get that second year of safe harbor. We're going to apply for all 98 ostensibly immediately, even though the buildings will be constructed, 4 or 5 at a time until we get the full 98 units up. But we'll have those building permits in hand, even though half of those units might not be under construction. The building permits will have issued,
Right.
and that will give the town the ability to get that second year of safe harbor.
So for the proposal we're looking at right here now, you're asking for a year's extension, right?
We are. It is a technicality, as Leslie mentioned. It's kind of a quirk in our permits, more for specificity. The original conditions that we came up with the staff and with your board 3 years ago now, we specified that the permits, special permits wouldn't really vest until a footing was poured.
Uh-huh.
Now, at this point, a few things have changed. Number one, the state law has changed and the town bylaw has changed to where special permits, as Leslie mentioned, are now valid for initially 3 years at a time, not 2. But we weren't grandfathered under that. Ours were old enough to be only 2-year periods. In the last year and a half, obviously, we put a huge amount of effort into the infrastructure phases of the project. First, the grading, and now the backbone infrastructure, which is the focus of some of our requests tonight for the Form J releases. We put, in the last 9 months, about $8 million worth of infrastructure in that is now manifesting itself to where we can start pouring foundations in the next couple months. So a year is, certainly probably much more than we needed. We just thought we should request kind of a fixed period of time. If I wanted to be more specific, when would we have a footing for the apartment buildings in? Probably in the next 60 days or 90 days at the outside.
Well, the reason I'm asking, I've asked related things before, is to wonder, for example, if we said 6 months, is that creating any leverage that would move things along more rapidly compared to a year? Leslie, do you have any comment on that?
No, I don't think we're at a point at this point
Because-
where that's necessary, either between us and the town or between us and the state. Certainly Leslie and Andrew are aware, in their close work with Tucker and town council, how active the process has been with the state in recent months and weeks.
Well, it's really speeded
So-
up compared to, say, last year. So, okay, thank you
Sure.
very much.
No, thank you.
Anything else, board members? All right, so we're going to look at all 3 of these at the same time. Notice I think we've been on that page. And so without any further discussion, what's the pleasure of the board? All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, that's going to be 5316 and 5416 Sandpiper 1 and Sandpiper 2. This is, again, Workforce Home Ownership Development Project. Leslie, did you have anything else you wanted to bring up on that?
No, the additional affordable units were negotiated through the final MOU with the select board. We think that's a win for the town to have more units. The board does have to approve their location. There's a map in your packet showing those. We think they're, reasonably dispersed, and we recommend that you approve.
Okay. Board members, is there any discussion on this? If not, do you want to take a second, or are we all good? Let's be, in regards to this particular project?
Yes, they had a number of, and maybe it comes later, where they had housing and parking configurations with garages, options A, B, C, and I options for the
Leslie, I don't remember.
The special permit required certain configurations, so that may be in your packet as a reference.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion?
Move
Well-
approval.
Thank you. And do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion on this. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. We'll get into our public hearings. I'm still waiting on Mr. Cohen at the moment at this time, who I understand is upstairs. If you're here for 8304, which is Reliance Way subdivision, 3418 Act Natural Incorporated, 8418 Mass Metaspa Incorporated, or 6618, which is 8 Marble Way, those are all continued to March 11th. On 6518, which is Mid-Island Fuel and Auto Wash, 43 Sparks Ave, they've got a request in for a withdrawal. What's the pleasure of the board with that?
Move approval of the withdrawal
Okay, and usually we'll...
without prejudice.
Thank you, awesome. I mean, you can if you want to, but that motion's made, and is there a second to it?
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Great. That's going to bring us to 8277 Clay Street subdivision modification.
Mr. Chair, I'd like
Yes.
to be recused for that. I
right.
have an abutter that's a client.
Duly noted. So Mr. Trudell is going to recuse from that.
All we have to do here is just,
Well, get this, hold on. There we go.
oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
Yep. Please, you're up there, Mr. Kyber.
Mr. Chairman, Board, Peter
Good evening.
Kyberg for KRE Realty Trust. This application has had a lot of discussion. It's a modification of a subdivision decision that you had already made. And the circumstances that you decided warranted reopening the subdivision were that we were having an agricultural permit and we're seeking commercial use that had access through the Richmond development. After many hearings, you have taken the agricultural permit away or we've given it back. We do no longer wish to do that and have given up the access through the Richmond development. So those modifications you've done successfully, and I suggest that you write a decision with containing those two conditions and close the subdivision. Unfortunately, my neighbors are here and they are going to bring up a couple of other matters, and we're putting in the road right now according to the plans that you've given us, and it's going along pretty well. We have Hughes ready. We have the drainage tanks on site, and we're hoping that we can really move that along and get it done. The road layout, according to the plans from the town engineer, is pretty wide. It's a pretty wide road, and there's drainage. The drainage swales go all the way to the lot lines of the road. In the plans, it says that there's not supposed to be any planting on the drainage swales because, of course, that's how drainage swales work. We put a whole bunch of material, drainage material in there, cover it with a little bit of loam and grow grass, but I don't think that you can grow trees on drainage swales. Be that as it may, you're also going to hear about the matter of the pitch pines. Obviously, there was an error that our surveyor made and took down some scrub oak and pitch pines. This is a civil matter between the parties that's being addressed in the appropriate channels. Insofar as I have contacted the surveyor's malpractice insurance carrier, the law firm of Melnick and Porter. I'm in constant contact with them, trying to resolve the matter. That contact has resulted in an offer to my neighbors, an offer that they chose not to reply to yet, but they will. Another lawyer this morning contacted me also on behalf of the neighbors regarding the same matter. So this matter is being addressed by 5 lawyers right now, and I would suggest that the town doesn't need to wade in and add another lawyer to the mix. I think it's going to be addressed, and I think it's going to be worked out in that manner. I don't think that the board needs to wade in there. And again, I think that the modification, the reopening of the subdivision plan has accomplished its goal insofar as eliminating the commercial use and the rear access, and would ask that you oppose it with those conditions. Thanks.
Okay, great. Just one thing, I want to turn to either Holly or Leslie at this point, just to see if you have any comments or anything you'd like to follow up on with this.
So, by way of background for anyone who's not familiar with this, the planning board opened the public hearing on their own initiative because there were issues related to the use of the property in the rear and the appropriateness or not of the roadway improvements that had been required of the board when it was supposed to be all residential. So the board opened the hearing. You did pursue some enforcement through the building division of Plus. And I think, what you wanted to accomplish has been accomplished. I don't really see the need for you to continue holding the public hearings or to render a decision at all. I think you could dismiss the matter without prejudice. There definitely are some issues with the landscaping, between the two property owners that will need to be addressed. But, as Mr. Kyberg mentioned, I think that is a civil matter for the two of them to work out. And if at some point in the future the board decides that you need to get involved in it in some way, you're still holding the rear lot. So you could, hold that until you're satisfied with the resolution.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Leslie, could I ask a follow-up? My recollection was the last time we were here, or several of the recent times, Ms. Alger was here along with Mr. Kyberg, and there was going to be some resolution in writing, and that Ms. Alger's client had alleged damage because of clear cutting inappropriately. Am I correct on that?
You are correct that Ms. Alger and I tried several times, and she's been very cooperative, but we've not made it to the finish line as far as reaching a resolution, particularly and only about these trees you characterize as clear cutting. But as I said, there are no less than 5 lawyers working on it now. I received a call just this morning from another lawyer who wants to work on it. So I think it's being addressed.
Well, I see Ms. Alger's coming in, but the reason I'm asking about this is if there's similar complaints from other people being affected by this, it worries me about whether we should be having any further oversight or something like that if this is a recurring kind of situation where there's cutting beyond what was supposed to have been cut.
It's only this particular event allocated, and again, our surveyor has owned up to his responsibility to that, and the matter is with his malpractice insurance
I
carrier,
heard that.
the attorneys for
I
his
heard that.
malpractice carrier, which is the appropriate place and the proper channel that needs to go through.
I understand your
Okay.
position. My concern is we're a public body, and if there's injury to the public going on, we need to be aware of it. And before we put it aside, I just feel like I really need to know what's going on. So that's why I'm asking questions. I appreciate your
Yeah.
forbearance.
What's that?
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Peter, to get back to the original traveled way versus the 40-foot layout, and you brought up the swale and the town engineer. I know Art's probably got the answer, so I don't want to, whoever wants to answer it. What was the traveled way supposed to be, 12 or 14? I remember it being pretty small.
It's
I'm trying to
teeny.
remember what we.
It's teeny, and it's gonna be teeny. We're gonna do it
It's gonna be-
exactly as the plans that
No,
you
I'm
have-
just
yeah.
asking, okay, and then the swale is right off, is it right off the edge, or is it?
Fills it right up to 40. Yep.
That's where I don't understand that. doesn't
Well,
need-
it looked to
doesn't
me
need
like-
to happen.
I'm sorry, through the chairman, I'm sorry.
No, please, go
It
ahead.
looked to me like the layout of the road had some future plan, the curve and everything, like at some point it was gonna connect, and that's why it was so wide. We have no desire to connect it and no plan to connect it. Again, we didn't make that layout of the road.
Yeah.
The town did.
Leslie, who did that? I'm just
The-
saying, it doesn't need to be that big, so I'm just curious.
Well,
So-
Layout can be 40, but not that.
So the surveyor and the engineer for the property owner at the time proposed the layout, and it was reviewed by Ed Pesci, and it is, fairly modest within the full layout. There is a swale, there is a traveled way, and the fact that they cut outside of the way is unfortunate, but, I don't know that that's something the board needs to continue being involved with.
I understand, I'm just refreshing the whole thing. It's been going on for a little while, so I kind of.
you all set?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. I see Mr. Gasparo at the microphone, so
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, board members, Arthur Gasparo. I appreciate you opening this public hearing and the discussion that has gone on. We would ask that you keep it open for one more month, and so that this can be resolved and the final information got back to you. As Mr. Kyberg referenced, we have had some back and forth and essentially drafted decisions which weren't acceptable to either party, and I think have to come to the board really probably for decision. The main issue that I think that is left is with respect to the questions that were just asked by Mr. Lowell. I actually have plans right here with me, and the approved plan requires clearing of at least 26 feet wide for the whole in order to construct the road. And I think the issue of the decision that what I would ask this board to require, and we've brought up in writing to you in the past, is a planting plan for the road layout. And I would reference the decision that was issued, and Exhibit A was very specific, and I'm quoting, "Landscaping is not being proposed, as the proposed roadway construction consists only of a 12-foot road, gravel road and drainage swale with minimal disturbance, and then existing trees to be saved will be decided upon during construction." Well, the decision who was supposed to decide to save the trees wasn't clear. And the fact that an improved plan cross-section, which I don't believe you have here, but I have it right here and it's from the approved plans, required the clear cutting of 26, realistically probably 30 feet. So I think the issue is that the rules and regulations, section 2.06, B14, require that a landscape plan for an AR subdivision be provided showing the location, size, and species of all proposed landscape plantings and trees to be preserved. That was waived under the decision because the thinking was in the presentation was that it was always only a 12-foot wide road. I think we're almost there with Mr. Kyberg. It's unbelievable that they've destroyed a portion of the Frederickson property and that it's gone well over a year to try to get some trees planted on it, and now it has to be litigated. I mean, it's ridiculous, but that's okay. I would think that because it was associated with an AR subdivision that, you should include a condition that has to be taken care of. But if not, regardless, I think at a minimum, this board should require a planting plan. Doesn't have to be some big elaborate thing, but where are they going to plant some trees back in the layout that would have been required as part of the AR subdivision? And then, if he says, oh, we're going to just do it, I don't think you want to have that uncertainty. I think that in this situation, it's completely reasonable to require a planting plan, which is typically required of an AR subdivision. Coming in and blowing out, the 26, 28, 30 feet wide isn't what I think the board was expecting for this road when they waived a landscape plan. And I know that, I hear from this board on almost, a monthly basis that that's why you have the power to reopen the public hearing. So that's what I would ask, is that this board require a planting plan for the layout of Clay Street, please, as well as issue the decision about the commercial uses that had been previously discussed. But the planting plan, I think, is in the best interest of the public as well as the board. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Leslie, if is that something that you want run through this board prior to closing it, or is it, in the past, we've also delegated that exact same thing to staff to work with the applicant to develop that plan?
So a decision was circulated that was not fully agreed upon. So maybe in this situation, the best route would be to continue it for a month. Maybe we can finalize the decision so that it's clear for all the parties involved.
Okay, great.
Move to continue.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Let me just recheck. Anyone else out there wishing to comment on this?
I just have a question.
Yes,
Sarah
Ms.
Aldrin.
Hi.
If you're going to take this up again in a month and we're going to have a decision in place, it would be helpful to know where the board is leaning in terms of the landscape plan that Mr. Gasparo has just asked about, because I think that is probably the one point that we haven't agreed to in our decision.
Actually, I'm going to let Mr. Kyberg chime in first before we say anything, please.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, just trying to reach a good resolution tonight. I like the suggestion that perhaps we can take guidance from staff on that.
All right. I think I'm hearing from staff, though, that they want that extra little bit of time before us at the moment and would like to continue for about a month's worth
Absolutely.
of time.
I'm in favor of continuing. I was just trying to get a sense where the board was heading in terms of whether or not you are going to require or not require a landscape plan, because that seems to be where we're stuck. Isn't it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm inclined to require a landscape plan.
I mean, here's the thing, Peter. Some of the trees are dead out there. No, I'm just saying. Although, I still go back to the electrical power getting put in and how that happened. I don't know if it was deliberate or not, but that big trench that got dug for that primary, I don't know. It just happened. Whoever did that, however that.
For the Fredericton.
But, okay, so my point is though, I'm still back on this 12 foot, so I was right, 12 feet traveled way, I remembered that somehow. So the swale, you can't plant trees in the bottom of the swale. So if we're taking up the layout, right, we're taking up the layout with a swale, can't the swale be brought closer to the traveled way so that we can plant trees in more of the layout that's been cleared? That's what I'm saying.
Through the chairman, we got heavy machinery out there and amounts of specific material, and we're working tightly with the town engineer on all the aspects. But
Okay.
I don't know if it's too late to do that. We might have to change a lot of work, kind of thing. I mean, we're in business right now putting that thing in.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly trees can be planted along the side of the swale. There's no reason that shrubs can't go along the side of the swale.
So it's not going to affect you as long as the trees are planted.
Yeah, and we're talking about
Okay.
just, it doesn't, to blow this entire area out, you wouldn't typically allow a AR subdivision to do such a large swath and then not show you any proposed plantings. So I think that's all we're really
Yeah.
looking for is, and by keeping the hearing open, then they can present a plan, put it on them to just prepare a plan for this board to approve, and you can hopefully close it up at the next meeting.
Okay. I mean, that's what I'm.
Again, through
Yeah.
the chairman, subject to recommendations from staff.
I would envision that all of you will be working through them so that we're all kind of on that same page. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, board members.
So I'll make a motion to continue to require a landscape plan to be discussed with staff and continue to March 11th.
Second.
That motion's made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Next thing before us is 519, which is James and Daniel Rocket on 21 Irving Street for the applicant, I believe, Mr. Bracken. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. This is a rear lot special permit subdivision. Submitted in your packet is a by right layout showing a proposed cul-de-sac and two conforming lots for the R40 district with adequate area, adequate frontage, and meeting the regularity factor. The area is pretty level. There wouldn't be any issues with constructing the roadway itself. The proposed plan creates two lots, A and B. Lot A with 40 feet of frontage on Pochak Ave. Lot B with 20 feet of frontage on Pochak Ave. The existing lot configuration is sort of a horseshoe shape. There exist two driveway easements. Existing, not proposed, but this is an existing easement, driveway easement to access the abutting property owned by the Nantucket Housing Authority. And there's a driveway license down on the 20-foot neck accessing this property to the south. The proposal is to create a 40,000 square foot lot for A and a 66,000 square foot lot for B. The configuration was probably derived by the location of the well for A and the septic system. Both properties have their own, they share a well, but they have their individual septic systems. We did go through the staff recommendations. One of the recommendations was for both lots to share the driveway. Mr. Rocket has no issue with that. If you want to make that a condition, this obviously would be the area. We could create an additional easement for lot B over the existing driveway. The other condition about making sure the driveway is 12 feet wide. Right now, the driveway is probably 10, 11 feet wide. Mr. Rocket also plans on widening the driveway as well, probably at least to 12 feet, if not to 14 feet wide. And there's plenty of space within the 40-foot right-of-way to do that. Or the 40-foot, not right-of-way, but neck. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board members, any questions that you have at this point? Yeah.
I have one, you had mentioned earlier, and maybe in the drawing, it goes without saying, but I just wanted to confirm. The lot that is to the left, right there, that will continue to have access through this driveway?
That's correct.
Okay, right?
Yes.
I just wanted
I'm Dan Market.
Hi.
When I acquired the right-of-way, I blocked off that with vegetation and I put in a new driveway, the 66 Pochuck. That's on the other side of
See it, the aerial.
the Housing Authority
The aerial.
lot. So,
Oh, it's in the aerial, yeah.
No.
Right there.
yeah, you see on the left,
Oh, I see.
I took that driveway when I took access.
So
to
instead of
Erding's.
having a circular
Yeah.
access. they
So
just
that's,
have-
I planted vegetation in there. So that old driveway doesn't exist anymore.
So we don't need a condition to this.
Yeah.
You already
the
have,
license
they already
agreement
have.
is still there.
So we need to get rid of that, keep the license with the other lot, the front lot. The one on the right, the little license thing, that's
68.
staying,
Yeah.
the 68, whatever that's called. And we just have to have an agreement between your two lots that you're creating, that you use for one access. Right? Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. The easement still exists. So I don't know if we can extinguish that easement or if they would still have the ability if they wanted to use that easement. I'm not sure what the legal arrangement was. But
What I was told by the town attorney was that that's revocable.
Yeah.
They put the license agreement in there and they said it can be revoked. They temporarily support
You should be able to get that cleaned up, I would think. I mean, they have their own driveway now.
I just,
I did that almost 8 years ago.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
it just seems to me that it's not for us to do that now without the other side being here to give their view about any details about that. That's my opinion. I mean, have you reached an agreement with them that they're happy to have it extinguished?
Oh, yeah, they were happy, it's all happy. The driveway and putting the truck.
So do you think you could get written documentation about that? I just feel to keep the record clear, we need to be sure that we've got that settled, not just on somebody saying that, but to be sure that,
You know, I talked to a few attorneys, and nobody wants to take on something simple like that. Because I've been trying to do that for the past 10 years. Yeah, but, I talked to John Gresham about it, he would probably do it. And that was, and he said they should.
Anything else, board members? All right, so Leslie, Holly, is there anything you want to chime in on this? No? Okay. So this is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone would like to comment on this.
Move to close the public hearing?
All right, and do I hear a second to that? Okay. This is a special permit as well, too, so I do need to activate one person for this. Campbell, you're up. Well, you've certainly often comment before, so you're now going to sit in on this application. There we go. So you get to vote on this.
So I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
Yeah, that was done and it was seconded. That's okay. Yeah, no, I'm just activating someone at the moment. All right. Discussion on the issue? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and what's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to approve with the conditions mentioned, staff, and the continuing the license on, what is it called, 68? This one? 68. And that through staff, they'll work on cleaning up the other easement of the 66 or whatever that number was, the house before it, housing authority. And then the width of the driveway that John talked about 1 foot wider, I mean, that's part of that for the rear house. Okay, so that would be my motion.
Second?
All right, so the motion's made and seconded. Discussion on the issue. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you. Okay. Next thing before us is 619, which is Richard W. Snowden, Catherine Snowden on 10 Mass Ave. Mr. Brescher, good evening, sir.
Good evening. For the applicants, Richard W. Snowden, Catherine E. Snowden, Attorney John Brescher. So, excuse me. What you have before you is a special permit request, and this one's kind of interesting. They own the property across the street at 11 Massachusetts Avenue, but they are requesting a special permit in order to site a residential garage on a vacant lot across the street, which they own, whereby the residential garage will be the primary use on that lot. Per section 139.2 of the town code, this is available by special permit, and planning board is the special permit granting authority in this instance. It's kind of tough to see from that particular plan, but if it's from the GIS, they are severely constrained by wetlands to the north. So they have actually gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They've to alter their pre-existing non-conforming dwelling in order to bring it a little bit closer to the layout of Massachusetts Avenue. In doing so, there was an existing garage on the property. They were going to convert that into living space, and they said, hey, why don't we try to add a residential garage across the street, property that they own at 10 Massachusetts Avenue. So the plan that you have here is certainly not complete by any stretch of the imagination, in as much as we're not sure what the ground cover is or the actual size of the garage. If you look at the bottom, sort of where the little hand is, there's the shaded area is the sort of rough estimate of what the garage could be. But more interestingly is the dashed red line around it. That's the only spot on the lot where the garage could be located between setbacks and septic systems. So inherently, they are constrained as to where it could potentially go. The garage would be truly just that, a garage and perhaps some storage space above. No habitable space, nothing of the sort. It was just actually a garage used for storage for the house across the street. Another fun little twist to this application is that they also purchased the neighboring lot at 12 Massachusetts Avenue in their own names. In doing so, the two lots have merged together. So they have still, the combined lot would still be undersized for the VR zoning district, having it's only 16,000 square feet. VR requires 20,000. But they would not intend to site anything over on the other lot. It really is just in this area. And so they are limited by the total amount of ground cover that they could potentially have. I want to say, I think 1,600 if they go by the 10% in VR, but I don't think they'd be looking at anything more than 1,100. But again, without it, I don't have a site plan at this time, but we intend to bring one. Part of the reason we don't have a site plan or HDC approval is that this is in their sort of chicken or the egg discussion, in that they don't want to go through with applying to HDC and getting site plans and designing the building if the planning board says that they can't have a residential garage as the primary use on a vacant lot. So I've told them to sort of queue up getting ready for the HDC if in the event that we sort of get the green light from the planning board. Nonetheless, I suspect that we will have we can get a site plan. If the planning board is so inclined to approve this, we can certainly get a site plan for you, and that would be subject to staff approval. But if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Like I said, I don't think I've ever seen one like this before, but hey, a first for everything.
Holly, do you got a aerial for this on your thing?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
John, just have a question in
Yes.
reference to the garage. Will this have a bathroom at all?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
So John, can you just, like, now that we got the real picture here?
Yeah.
Instead of that, other, whatever it was, where's the leach field, number 11? Like, point to that, so I know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's on.
No, I know, but like, where is it in the sense of that? Like, what lot is it?
Yes.
Right there.
Yeah.
So it's just there's a leach field for the other houses across the street?
That's it.
Interesting, it's like,
I know.
this is, the old days. Yeah. Interesting. So they're not gonna build anything on that lot, John, they just bought it for fun?
They you know what they bought it for? To be honest, they bought it for boat storage.
Okay, all right.
And just to
So
have.
this is sort of a sketch plan,
Yep.
preliminary plan, sort of, without the real name, and just
Yeah.
seeing, so they don't go through all this, but no.
That's the gist of it. I mean, it's sort of the outline of this is the most that it could ever be.
I
You know,
mean,
we're
those
not-
people over there are so lucky to be able to even do anything. They have no water, bad water, copper pipes get holes in them. Replace their washing machines every 2 years. It's crazy. So, I mean, I don't have an issue with it because they're so limited to what they can do, and the fact that they have a leach field on their own land across the street. I've never seen that before. So, I mean, they're not really doing anything. It's just a lot of work to do it. They're not doing a lot. It's a huge process to do very little. So, I mean, you want to get the pleasure of everyone, I would think, right? I'm fine with them moving forward with something that fits in that little square. Personally.
Yep, go ahead.
What are the chances in the next 2 years that this will be back for going to change to the special permit for it to become a garage, apartment or guest house, overflow housing, that kind of thing?
I would say it would be somewhere between slim to none. I mean, sort of the.
No, I see what this is, and I'll just say with the purpose for my question. I've noticed that we have permits that go through, special permits that go through, and then in a couple of years, you get them back, and the whole thing is blown up with something entirely new in it. So I sort of get wondering, well, did they know they were doing that?
Well-
Started it, and maybe they're piecemealing it, or what? So that's why I asked.
Sure. I mean, I'll tell you candidly, their intention is truly a garage and a studio. And I was actually chatting with them today, and I said, the silly thing is, if you were able to construct a small enough dwelling, you could do it by right and not need any relief at all.
That's what I was-
Well, that's where.
But
This is just a weird zoning district
Yeah.
requirement, is what this is.
yeah, but they have no intention of doing that. It really is storage and garage.
Anything else from the board or Leslie, Holly, anything?
Mr. Chairman, the special permit allowance for a garage on an adjacent residential lot is relatively new. The board discussed it quite a bit, I think, at the time, and it was to allow this very thing and for the board to have an opportunity to see how is it going to be used and is it really going to fit in with the residential neighborhood or not. And I think in this case, as Attorney Brescher said, the site is really constrained with wetlands and septic fields and wells and other things. And the building envelope for the proposed garage doesn't seem to be that large. It's going to be subject to HDC review. So I think if the board wants to put some conditions about, the use being related to an adjacent property or something like that, that's totally reasonable. But I think that, getting into the details of the site plan, it's going to have to meet the zoning requirements. So I don't think that's something that you need to be too concerned about at this stage.
Anything else from the board? This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. If anyone would like to comment on this? Seeing no comment,
Move to close the public hearing.
do I hear?
Second.
Oh,
Is that the
Oh,
appropriate?
Ladar, can I
Yeah, hold on
put?
a minute. Is that what we need to do with this?
Yes.
You're gonna.
It is?
Well-
No, it's not really
Special
an
permit.
application, or are we just saying? I thought we were just saying yes, that they can start the process, or we're saying yes, that they can do it.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please.
The idea would be to close the public hearing and approve or not the special permit to allow them to proceed
To
with a
proceed
residential
with- okay,
garage.
okay.
So they still need HDC approval.
Okay.
And then after that, after the appeal period is over, they can get their building permit.
Right. We good?
This is the first time I've had one of these. I don't anything like this before.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing on something like this once beforehand in the dim fast.
Okay.
Anyways, I'm sorry. So the motion was made and seconded to close the public hearing. Ladar, if you'd be so kind, please. Thank you. Discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously and the pleasure of the board.
Make a motion to approve with staff recommendation for a site plan to be provided that includes ground cover for the garage and the driveway for the garage.
Okay, do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion? Yes, ma'am?
The additional conditions in the staff.
Staff recommendation.
Okay, thanks, John.
All right. So again, that motion was made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
I see Mr. Cohen has arrived at this point, so we're gonna go flip back to previous plans, which is 0507 MCD is amended for Nantucket Trust, 130 Pleasant Street. Before you all begin, I just want to bring up something for the record at this point. The owner of Island Pharmacy, Alan Bell, who I work for, has leased out 3 parking spaces at this point. I feel I can act on this without any prejudice or swaying of thought at the moment because I have no financial interest. But if that sentiment is out there, I'm happy to step back from this. Otherwise,
I mean, I don't have any objection to it. I don't know.
yeah, and I just want to bring it up for the record. And if anyone had any feelings about it, certainly be willing to step back. That's all. Otherwise,
So Stephen Cohen, for the applicant, I represent the tenant, Mr. Reed here, who represents the landlord. So I believe that you're aware that there are several issues at this property related to a special permit that was issued in 2017, and we are not discussing any of those tonight. It's a litigation, it's a matter of contention. That's not what we're doing here. My client had the Petrichor wine bar downtown and would like to move that to this location. There are existing special permits that we feel are appropriate and existing and non-appealable that work essentially with no alterations. The 1999 special permit provides for a 28-seat restaurant with dinner and brunch, and the 2007 alteration to that allowed for an additional 20 seats up to 48 seats with the provision of, at that time, it was 6 additional off-site parking spaces within the 500 feet allowed by MyPod. What we have provided is 2 letters from nearby property owners providing for 3 parking spaces after 8 p.m. and 12 parking spaces after 5 p.m. both of which more than satisfy the parking needs and the regulation. So this is not actually a special permit application, and I don't know how you
No.
would handle procedurally moving forward, but I wanted to give you sort of the facts on the ground. My client intends to open at that location with that kind of a restaurant, essentially on the existing permits, with the alteration of providing more parking than was previously provided.
Go ahead.
Could you just confirm, Mr. Cohen, the total number of parking spaces, therefore, that are solely attributable to your operation?
So I'll let Arthur speak to the spaces on site.
There are 4 parking spaces in the front of the building, between the building and Sparks Avenue, Pleasant Street rather. And there are an additional 5 parking spaces that are on the side of the building that extend partially into the layout of Chin's Way. That's the way the property has been laid out for many, many years. And that layout, including the existence of spaces on the side, has been mentioned in previous decisions of the board. The total number of parking spaces that are required for the use per the parking requirements in the bylaw, I think are established as being 13.
The Chin's Way lot areas was what I was wondering about because, as we all recall from prior discussion, some of those really are at least 1, if not 2, if I remember correctly, are really in the right of way, right?
All of those spaces, again, and the layout of those spaces has been the same for many years. One part of it was shown as being a loading zone previously, but loading zones are no longer required automatically. So it allows for 5 parking spaces on that side. And all of those spaces are partially out into the layout of Chin's Way.
Thanks.
So that if you pull your car in, the front of your car is going to be well within the lot. The rear of your car, unless you have a Mini, in which case you might be able to get it entirely into the lot. The rear of the car is going to be out into Chin's Way. If you take a look at the site on the ground, you see that that area is all laid out. The paved part of the way is not encroached upon by any vehicle that would be parked in those spaces. They're all in the gravel parking area that's on the side of the building and is sort of designated by curb and plantings.
Thank you.
Okay. Board members, anything else?
Are any of the parking spaces that are around the building itself, are any of them handicapped? Are you required to have any?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like that?
In the front, there's a accessible space. There's
And
2.
that- Okay, and then, so that retains the 3 parking spaces in the front, or is that?
Yeah, if you were to look at it, it would look like 6 spaces, but there's only 5 because one of them is the
Okay.
loading, unloading. It's a bricked area. It has to be a hard surface. The rest of it is all gravel. So that bricked area is the access point for that abutting space.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
Stephen, General, where is the loading zone, or where do they take deliveries presently, or when they were open? When do they?
I can't tell you. I think that basically it was on the side of the building.
Within those 5 parking places, or into Chin's Road,
Well,
Chin's Way?
theoretically, well, bear in mind that those spaces all do extend into Chin's Way,
Mhm.
and obviously a truck doing loading would probably extend further into it. But again, we're not required to provide a loading area right now under the way the bylaw is.
Yeah, my only concern is there are cars that are parked in those 5 spots, and they do extend into Chin's Way, and there is a delivery during the day. The delivery truck would necessarily block traffic going to the other businesses behind that
Sure. Well,
and exiting off of the pharmaceutical.
yeah, historically, this property has been a restaurant for more than 20 years, and that hasn't, to my knowledge, happened. But I think part of that is probably because the deliveries are in the morning and the restaurant is only open at night.
Mhm.
There's also alternative places that deliveries can be done from. I see Matt wants to get into it, and I think we might all love it if he skips it, but he'll tell you it's not on like.
It's not a laid out spot. You just drive in, put your columns out, and pull the thing.
Yeah, it doesn't-
they find a spot. They deliver to both restaurants from one spot when they can. If it's the same company delivering to two places,
Right.
You know what I mean? They find a spot.
They tend to deliver
It's
to an
not-
area, so they're not going to go to, one restaurant and then move the truck 20 feet and go to the next restaurant. They don't have that luxury here.
No, I understand it. I owned a convenience store out of town, and I was required to put a loading zone. And I do remember, even extending into the parking, it created a little bit of havoc, and that's why I'm bringing it up. I didn't know if there was a designated area or time for deliveries.
Right. So I think it's just important to remember that I'm not applying, my client is not touching the lunch issue or the daytime use issue. So those parking spaces should be empty because there won't be any operations at that time.
Thank you.
And what are your hours of operation? If you don't mind me asking.
5 to 12 or 5 to 1.
5 p.m. to 1 a.m. Okay. Go ahead.
I just have one more question. I noticed that you said you have 12 existing students that close to this. Is that a new store where they used to rent the kids stuff?
That's right on Orange Street. Yes.
On Orange and West Street, and do you know if any of that parking is ever utilized by cities? For parking right now?
It's not. Kitty's does have arrangements with other spaces, with other properties there, and I believe they have signage for those, but not at that facility.
So Leslie, go ahead, because I really do want to hear from staff on this.
So, Mr. Chairman, the issue I think that's really before you tonight is not about the loading or whether people should be parking in the spaces that don't quite meet zoning over on Chen's Way, but it's have they provided the off-site parking that was required in their special permit condition in 2007 to go from 28 seats to 48 seats.
Right.
And that decision required that a lease or some type of agreement be made with a property owner within 500 feet of the site to provide at least 6 parking spaces. And some time ago, you all actually decided to proceed with enforcement action because that wasn't being done. And then the business went away and nothing came of it. So, now we have a new business owner who wants to start her business there, and the Board of Selectmen have said that they won't release the liquor license until you say that the decision is being complied with. So I personally have not seen any written agreement or anything.
Yeah, I have copies. I believe I submitted them to Holly and Catherine. Is that what we got? All right. I have it here with me. I can give it to staff, but I have a written letter signed by the owner from Roasted for 12 spaces starting at 5 p.m. and a written letter signed by Ellen Bell for 3 spaces at the pharmacy at 8 p.m. So 15 evening spaces, a little more than the 6 required.
So,
So
so if that complies with the exact language in the 2007 decision, then, I think that's what the board was supposed to discuss tonight.
yeah, I got to admit this isn't a public hearing, but Rhoda, go ahead. Did you have something you want to ask?
Good evening. For the record, Rhoda Lyman, I represent Patrick Ridge at 1-2-4 Chins Way. I'm quite stunned that nobody submitted the leases because the past 3 decisions from this board have been they want to see leases. They want to see who the landlord is, what the duration is, who the tenant is, and we haven't seen that. And I think it's a little inappropriate that you're being handed those now and that we didn't see them ahead of time. I think the select board was really clear on what they required. And I think if you're going to approve something, I think it's important for us to understand what you're approving. Just so this board is clear, this has been going on since 2000. And they went from 32 seats and they were approved at 28 seats, and then they went to 48 seats, and then they got 12 additional seats, and they have never approved additional parking. The only additional off-site parking they had was with Allen Bell, and that expired when the tenant moved out. So they have been in violation now for many years, and I think it's important that we at least have a chance to look at these leases and review them, and that we know the term of it, because these leases should expire. If it's a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease, then they should be back here, and it should run only to this tenant.
Mr. Cohen, just for the record at this point, you said you had 2 different lease agreements. I've only got one here right
And
now.
then just hand it to.
There's only one.
Yeah,
I have it here.
thank you.
We like to see those.
Sure. Did I give you, sorry, just the roasted or the?
Yeah.
Parmesan? Okay.
That's the one we don't have right now, and that's why I want staff to review it.
So, I entirely agree with Rhoda. What happened in the past was entirely inappropriate. It wasn't my clients, and I don't know that there's anything you can or should do about it, but people should not have planning board permits with requirements that are not complied with. That tenant has left the island, has not operated in that business or any business here, and my client is trying to do the right thing and come in and run a nice restaurant. We have secured permission from 2 nearby compliant landlords to provide 15 parking spaces. And if the board wants to have an annual certification of that or anything appropriate, that would be fine. My client doesn't want to do the wrong thing; she wants to do the right thing. And if the board wants to require submission of evidence on an annual basis, fine. I gave them to the staff. I'm happy to email it to you. Sure. They're very short. You're welcome to go with
I think it's appropriate that you at least let us look at them. This has been going on for so many years. We've had a lot of complaints for so many years. I would like to look at this.
Mr. Chair.
That's why I agree. I think we all want to look at them, so just bear with me for a minute. Did you have a question in the meantime?
I wanted to ask Mr. Cohen if we held this over for a month because there's not been adequate time for everybody to review. Is that a problem?
I think it would be a problem. I think that the leases are pretty short and plain on their face. They say, I own this land, I'm giving permission for the number of parking spaces. I don't think that requires an extensive review.
Thank you for that view, but I think it's a matter of fairness. I think there should be, personally, and others may disagree, but.
I did email them to the staff, so I'm a little surprised that didn't get.
Well, but apparently they didn't, people next door didn't get a chance to review.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, you have a meeting scheduled for Thursday, the 21st.
That's true.
So that may be a good compromise to give everyone a little more time to review it, but not wait until the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah, and Mr. Cohen, just reading through those rapidly, I do see where the leases are set at a 1-year time frame. So I think having that continuously reviewed wouldn't be such a bad thing.
Oh, I think it would be entirely appropriate.
Yep.
I think we can agree to extend it to the 21st so that we can have an opportunity to review.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, because this is kind of breaking news for all of us, and we're just trying to digest this. And there are times I don't listen to necessarily digest things on the fly.
Hey, can I just make a comment,
Yeah, please.
if you don't mind?
No, I'd love you to.
Oh, okay. So, going back to 2000, and that's a long time ago. It is not yesterday. That's a long time ago. Everybody shares parking over there. Now, when Patrick bought the businesses, when we saw that Willie House deed a year and a half ago in this room, that changed the whole plan. When we saw that, the way that deed is and the land and where it goes and all of that the owner has rights to all that parking. We went through this so many times, and we denied that previous owner lunch. Okay? And then here comes that other application on Dave Street, literally one meeting after we denied this guy lunch over squabbling about parking. And we basically said, at least I certainly did, we're gonna approve this, and we just denied this guy lunch in an existing business. That was a really unfortunate scenario. This is a very complicated little spot right here. Because everybody that lives on Nantucket shares parking. They run across the street from the chicken box, they run over to Stop and Shop, they use Stop and Shop parking to go out to dinner. Anyone that says that that doesn't happen is a liar. That happens every day. Every day. Every night. So to see a resolution with a new person, to not be asking us to get all, arguing about lunch and bringing all that up, there's going to be, as time goes on, there's going to be more shared parking in that area. We know the fire station's going away. There's going to be more parking. But right now, I think this is a good compromise, getting some legal spaces for this new applicant to take care of this issue with the evening, but not asking for lunch to me is enough. Okay? Because the contention of this property over the years has been brutal. And it's unfortunate because the entire area is sharing parking. And we got this guy held hostage for this little crazy little parking arrangement, which I know is poor. I'm not saying it was a good plan. It's terrible. I mean, there's no way you can fit the cars in the front. But I'm just saying globally in this area is a sharing area for parking. And that's just how it works. If everybody had to have their own parking spaces and Stop and Shop was out at night saying you can't park here unless you're buying a banana, there'd be nobody parking. So I appreciate the effort that's been taken to get these spaces, but the total picture, I don't see an issue with it. Because they're not asking for more than what was there before. They're not. Okay? Is that fair, Rhoda?
Well, I guess my concern is that my client had to rent spaces off-site before he bought that back building.
I know.
And I've said this several times before this board, and I've said it to the select board, and I think everybody should be treated the same way. And he showed up with leases, and I think that this person should do the same. And I was just handed the leases. I thought that they would have been submitted more than an hour ago or more than a day ago, because that's what the select board asked for. So I appreciate your comment about giving us some time to at least look at them. And I would ask that, if it's a 1-year lease, then your decision should be based on 1 year, because the Allen Bell lease that we had before, that owner never came back. So.
Did you have something, John, please?
Yeah, just that, number one, I don't think it's unreasonable to hold out the week and go to the 21st. Number two, each time previous owners have come back, or previous business owners have come back from 28, 32, 48, 60 seats, and they're really, I like the fact that there's going to be extra parking now. However, the location where Roasted is for the parking, it's still within walking distance, but it's not obviously ideal. If I had 18 spaces out in Sconset, I could say I had a lease for 18 spaces, but that's not going to help this particular business. So I still think it's going to be a little congested in the area, although there are legal spots down the street. Has there been any consideration to maybe reduce some of the seating in there? We'll go backwards. Instead of trying to fit a quarter of the dime slot, maybe we can alter some of the seating.
Well, this isn't really a special permit hearing in front of you. It's just
Correct.
a confirmation
Correct.
of an existing permit that was issued first in 99 and then updated in 2007, 12 years ago. And the only question in front of you, and Leslie can correct me if I'm wrong, but is, are we now in compliance by submitting these leases? And I think the simple answer is yes. So as much as I appreciate that you want to be diligent about it, I don't know that this needs to go through a special permit-like process, and frankly, it shouldn't.
Right.
The only thing you should do is say, if the applicant has provided leases, then the applicant is in compliance. So I'm not sure that we really need to continue. If you want to, that's your prerogative, but the leases are a requirement, the leases have been provided, that's generally it. And in fact, the leases are more than, 150% more than the requirement of the special permit. So I would say we don't need to require it. We've demonstrated compliance and you can close tonight. If you want to continue so that you can review the leases.
I know myself, Mr. Cohen, I'd like to continue because these really did just get in our hands tonight. And so I think getting to the 21st would be good. But the other thing I would really love you and your client to consider is how are you going to tell people where it is as well, too? Somehow, because, you're within the 500 feet, I got it, because it's 500 feet as the crow flies. Okay, straight line. So you're there. But I just want you to consider somehow, how are you going to communicate that as well to the public when they're pulling in?
Sure.
And so, I'd like to give, you and the applicant a little bit of time to figure out how that's going to work out.
Well, I think if the commission, if the board issued a decision that determined that they're compliant, the leases are in compliance, but that they have to be, evidence has to be provided on an annual basis, and also that an appropriate sign be posted, both of those would be entirely reasonable conditions.
Okay. Because I think that'll be really a good key to it.
Sure, absolutely.
And
people don't know about a lease.
right, absolutely, absolutely.
If you look at Kitty's and West Creek, and there are signs everywhere, so it's consistent with the neighborhood.
But that's why I want you to think about what you're going to do on the building as well too, because the ones across from Kitty's and stuff are at least within visual proximity.
Yeah.
You can kind of start figuring it out.
Right.
This one's just a little bit more of a distance to get to.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of a walkability component to it. So I'd just like to have you give that a little bit of consideration, which I think would be fair.
Sure, I think so. And my client wants to be a good neighbor.
No question.
Patrick is putting out a good product. He spent a lot of time and a lot of money building a good business over there, and my client is looking forward to being a good neighbor with him. And so if we can make sure that our customers are not abusing his parking and know what they're supposed to do, that's better for everybody. That doesn't mean, like Nat said, people kind of do whatever they want, but that's not how the board issues permits.
Right. Okay, board members, anything else?
Do you need a motion?
What would be appropriate is a motion to continue this to our meeting on the 21st.
Move to continue this matter until February 21st.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I just need to make a quick note here. I'm sorry. All right. The next two applications, we're back to our public hearings, and the next two applications that are before us are 719, which is Sandpiper Place 1, and 819, which is Sandpiper Place 2. I'm going to recommend to the board that we probably should hear these together since they're so similar to each other and will basically kind of bring us to the same place. So for the applicant, Mr. Arminetti, hi again.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, board members. If I could, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, just digress very quickly.
Sure.
Back to the Form J matter that the board already dealt with in the past tonight. I just wanted, you kind of blew through that quickly, which is fine with us. But I think Leslie was being a little modest in terms of articulating the amount of staff participation that's involved in that. And just wanted to take a quick second and recognize that. As the board's aware, on a night like tonight when almost half your agenda is taken up by our project is rather large and takes a lot of time and management, not just from our side, but from the town side. And now that it's real and it's coming out of the ground and it's not just on a piece of paper or a screen anymore, there's a lot of time and effort that has to be put in by all the town departments that are involved, but particularly the planning staff. And we probably don't often enough express our gratitude to the staff, to Holly and Catherine, Mr. Pesci, Leslie, Andrew, and that entire team. And I think occasionally your board and the public probably needs to hear that a little more. So just wanted to mention that there's a lot of moving parts to this project. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made on the fly, to the point where we've now started a protocol where Mr. Pesci actually attends a portion of our weekly construction meetings, which has been very efficient and very productive for everybody. And I just wanted to acknowledge that in conjunction with the Form J's before we get into this matter.
Great. Thank you.
Sure, we don't always agree with the staff, and they hold our feet to the fire, but they do deserve some acknowledgement more than they're usually given. This matter that's before you, board members, springs forward specifically from the additional provisions that were requested and negotiated in the incremental renegotiation of the memorandum of agreement that we had with the select board over the last few months, that has resulted in this request to modify our 2 single-family and duplex subdivision and special permits. In this case, the second modification to our Sandpiper Place special permits, the northern half of the project and the southern half of the project. What we're requesting is a fairly specific modification to allow that 3 of the 14 duplex lots within the projects be allowed to be developed with the AMI restricted homes. The original approval that was granted back about a year and a half ago prohibited any of the affordable units being constructed on the duplex lots. In the negotiations with the select board, it was suggested that in order to kind of mitigate the fact that we were being required at a late date to offer more affordable units, which obviously would have an economic impact on the project, partly to mitigate that and partly to also spread the project in accordance with the spirit of the affordability laws, to have affordable units be also developed as duplex units and not just as detached units. It was proposed, and we accepted and negotiated with the select board, that 3 of the additional 4 affordable units would be allowed to be developed on the duplex lots. So 3 of the 14 total duplex lots would now be able to be developed as affordable units if the board proceeds and approves this. It's important to note that the total number of units within the project is not being requested or proposed to go up. That'll remain at 94. It's important to note that the total number of duplex lots is not proposed or requested to go up. That will stay at 14. It's important to note that the total number of bedrooms within this project and our rental project are not proposed or requested to go up. That'll remain at 700. We're just asking for permission to be able to develop 3 of the maximum 14 duplex units for affordable units, 2 of which would be 80% affordable, AMI restricted affordable units that would go on the SHI list, 1 of which would be the locally affordable 175% AMI affordable units. So it's a fairly minor change. It probably looks like it's more than it is on paper, but that's the nature of it, and that's the derivation through this negotiation with the select board. Thank you.
Great. Board members, any questions? Yeah.
Excuse me, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So 3 of 14 would be between the 2, Sandpiper 1 and Sandpiper 2, or that's just Sandpiper 1?
3 in total across both of the projects. 1 of the duplex units would be within the Sandpiper 1 South development. I don't know, Holly, if you might have a chance to maybe put up the lot map. That might help the board visualize this.
That's
so
okay.
1 will be in Sandpiper 1, 2 will be in Sandpiper 2. 3 total across the entire development.
And is the request, again, through Mr. Chair, to have it waived specifically a total of 3 of 14, or is it to waive the requirement to limit the AMI restrictions to single family?
If the board wanted to be more specific and say only 3 of the affordable units could be developed as duplex, we'd be fine with that, because we're not looking to do any more than that. So if you wanted to be more specific and condition it in that manner, we'd have no problem with that.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily suggesting that. I just had differing information, so I wanted to understand what it is you're asking for. So if you're looking for something that's more lenient and it's acceptable, we're not tying your hands unnecessarily.
Okay. Board members, anything else? Holly, Leslie, anything? No? Okay,
No.
Leslie.
We support the request. Again, this was negotiated by the select board, and it provides another home ownership housing type opportunity and a little bit different price point as well. So we think more is better there.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this. Seeing no comment at this point.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Mr. Welch, you're going to be activated for these two, okay? Done. All right. So the motion's made and seconded. Discussion on that issue? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously, and the pleasure of the board.
Move approval of both applications.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion?
This is for approval with the wider waiver.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no problem. This is why I want you guys to chime in if you need to. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you all. All right. That's going to bring us to the warrant articles for upcoming 2019 annual town meeting, and I'm just going to request a little bit of latitude at the moment to see if we can maybe clear the deck a little bit. Articles 47, which is the reduction in the ground cover in the ROH. Article 48, which is the amendment to adjust the residential development options. Article 49, which we haven't even heard yet, which is your technical modifications. And Article 57, which is, we haven't heard that yet, the amendment to modify the definition of structure. The thought here is that there's still some work that needs to be done, and they need to be continued, and will definitely need to be continued to 221. I don't know if anyone in here in the audience needed to comment on those, because if not, the board's going to have some more input and really want to focus on this on the 21st. Not seeing anyone from the audience, then I'll take a motion from the board to continue those four until 221.
So move.
And second, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Okay, Article 41 needed to be renoticed, so that's on our agenda for tonight. This is a zoning map amendment to place properties on Yawkey's Way, Macy's Lane, and Hinsdale Road, currently located in the RC2, into the R5 district. And this is a planning board initiative. So Leslie or Holly, do you want to lead off?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, we have been working with the property owner on Yawkey Way to rezone these properties for quite some time. He's now ready to do so, so we want to move ahead while we can. And the two properties on Hinsdale and Macy's are primarily already in the R5 district, but they each have small slivers that are remaining in RC2. I think the board did discuss this at a prior meeting, but we had to re-advertise it. So I'd recommend that you move ahead with this article.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions at this stage? Yeah, please go.
We did do a map of this before.
Yes, there's a map.
It was a few meetings ago.
I think it was on at the January 14th meeting.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, the lots on Yawkey, those are all, there's a couple of vacant ones, but the rest are improved with duplexes. Those are, of course, residential. And the Hinsdale Road and Macy's Lane properties are also residential.
Anyone else on the board? It's a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone would like to comment on this. Seeing no comment, what's the pleasure of the board?
Second.
Here a second. Motion's made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously, and the pleasure of the board.
Move that. Go ahead.
You're all too polite.
No, move to give an affirmative recommendation
So,
on this Article 41.
got it. So positive recommendation. And second? Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Great. That brings us to Article 50, which is a zoning map amendment to place properties at 43 and 47A through C Appleton Road, currently located in the VTEC district, into VN district. This is a citizen's petition. Mr. Reed rising to the occasion. Good evening, sir.
I'm a citizen.
You're a citizen.
I am.
Oh, okay. So I should hold comment at this point. Is there anyone here for the applicant?
No, I'm saying I'm the citizen.
Oh, you're the,
I'm the
oh, I'm
citizen
so
who
sorry.
exactly
I'm
it is.
sorry. I completely
On
misunderstood
behalf of
for
my
a second,
clients,
sir.
Rick Kalman and Lee Papali.
Yes, sir.
This has been, there was a previous hearing on this, it was continued until tonight. Once again, what we're proposing is that my client's property, we also included the adjacent property as well. I understand the owners of that property would rather that they stay within VTAC rather than being moved to VN, and we certainly are willing to accommodate that that request. The property that my clients own has been the subject of a lot of discussion. It contains at the present time 2 dwellings, a 3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom dwelling. There's another building there that's been used for various purposes, some commercial. And what they would like to be able to do to resolve the final use of that property would be to put a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom apartment in that building. And the zoning district that would allow for that in the country overlay district, which we are in, is VN, Village Neighborhood, rather than VTAC, which it's now in, because VN allows, quote, apartment building, end quote, as a primary use. Apartment building, as defined in the bylaw, does not mean, Harbor Towers in Boston. It means it's specifically defined as being no more than 6 dwelling units with no more than a total of 8 bedrooms. And they can be in multiple buildings, not necessarily in one large building. That's what we're trying to accomplish, to wind up with there being a residential use. There would, any commercial uses on the site would be no more than customary home occupations, which of course you can do in any district. Rick Kalman has a painting business, and his wife Lee Papali is an artist, and the result of that would be to enable them to proceed in that fashion. Now, the point will come up that there are quite a number of uses that are permitted as a matter of right in VN, which is actually a district which in general allows softer uses than VTAC, which is non-industrial, but it's more heavy commercial use than is VN. VN allows much more by way of retail type uses, none of which we have any intention of doing. And we are proposing, as has been done in certain other situations, that we execute a covenant with the town that would prohibit, that would restrict us against any of those otherwise permissible retail uses that we don't propose to do, so that there's no concern that there'll be creeping commercialism, if you will, in terms of there being a large retail operation down on the site. That's simply not proposed. You have, I think, you have a rather heartfelt letter from my clients. I'm not going to get into that. You have it. It's in your record. They really want to get the situation resolved, and they're a little frustrated. But in any event, we want to try to get this accomplished. But we have give-ups of things that would be permitted in VN, most of which are permitted as accessory in VTAC. So if we did some kind of a permitted use in VTAC, we'd be able to do a lot of these things in any event. But we're going to give them up, and they'd be permitted as a matter of right in VN. Convenience store, bakery, open air market, takeout food establishment, drive-through takeout food, theaters, auditoriums, etc. laundromat, automated teller machine, museum, well, no, not really, rooming, lodging, or guest house by special permit. We don't propose to do any of those things and would enter into an appropriate covenant with the board, with the town acting through the board, that you would be able to hold, and if the article is passed, then would be able to record immediately after town, well, after the approval of the article by the AG's office, I guess, when it's finally become final. And that's essentially what we're suggesting to you. And I think that, I know there's been a lot of concern about this in the neighborhood, and I understand that. But I think this results in, across the board, a good resolution to the problem of this property. You know, this belonged to, as did just about everything else in that area, to my client, Lee Papali's mother, Phyllis Burchell. Phyllis and Gibby own what's now the Pine Valley subdivision, as well as this property and a large area around it that now belongs to the land bank. I think that as the the ultimate needs of the family, the ultimate uses of the property by the family were not necessarily all thought through, but there were buildings on this site. There have always been buildings on this site, and the proposed uses, entirely residential uses that we're now presenting in an appropriate way that utilizes the existing structures on this oversized 2-acre lot are, I think, a good result for the community.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members? Go ahead. Yeah, I think that'd be appropriate if you're going to speak. Well, why don't you wait a minute? Because technically, this is for the yeah. I like that distinction. Why don't you wait till we get up here, okay? If you don't mind. So go ahead. Board members, do you have anything?
No,
if you don't, that's
It's been
fine.
discussed before. I'd like to hear.
Yep, absolutely. Holly, Leslie, is there anything you want to bring up? Okay, great. So let me open the public hearing at this stage. Do me a favor, just if you want to be recognized, just raise your hand and then just tell me who you are and where do you live. Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because you know what happens is this gets recorded. I mean, we can all hear you fine, but the microphone is so the people in the, when they watch this later, can hear what's going on as well, too. So thank you. Please.
Okay, Campbell Sutton, 15 Appleton Road, and alternate on the planning board. And I have, so I just wanted the planning board to take a look at the village neighborhood versus the village technical, without the background of who names who are involved. Because to me, it's really about, is this a proper designation for this area? In other words, there seem to be only 2 VN districts on the island that I could find. There may be more and they can fill me in. And the village neighborhood is in Sconset, in downtown Sconset. And then there's another one on Pulpus Road where Island Lumber is, and Island Liquors used to be, and the tackle shop and Don Allen Ford were. Those were the only 2 village neighborhoods that I could find. And then when I took a look, I have this on paper, but most of you understand it. When I took a look at the types of uses that would be allowed in a village neighborhood, it just gave me the feeling of a village. Somewhere where you have a grocery, or you have a gas station, or you have a dry cleaning, or you have other businesses along with residential use. And Appleton Road, and I understand that the proponents want to nix a lot of this, but I just want to look at overall what is VN, what is VTech, and I think you could argue that neither are appropriately placed here in terms of being a village. Appleton Road is a dead-end road, and it's off a private road. Now, this was given a VTEC, so I think that just sort of goes without saying that's what it is. I don't believe that that makes it an appropriate jump into a village neighborhood. From a planning standpoint, I think it should be about planning towards the master plan. Does this VN, does this work with the master plan? I did not find anything in the master plan that led me to believe that villages would spring up at the end of a dead-end road, or that idea would be promoted for planning. It seems that a lot of the drive behind this is due to a family's issue, which I can empathize with. However, I don't, I'm not a family counselor. I am not an estate planner. I am not a mediator. I don't have certificates in any of this. So I really can't speak to those. Then the main reason they seem to want to do this is for an apartment so that they can have 3 added bedrooms. Now, I thought under the definition of an apartment building would go, it's by special permit, and it would go on a lot that could otherwise be subdividable, right? And this lot cannot be subdividable at all. So I don't even see through definition of the apartment, the definition of an apartment building, where this is an appropriate placement for the town as a village neighborhood kind of thing. So I think that was all I wanted to say. And I guess my question was, from my reading of the definition of an apartment building under the special permit, that language for the land did not appear to be something you could get a waiver for. In other words, you'd get a waiver that said, I know that your land's not subdividable, but you can have an apartment building anyway, right? And I'm going with the 6 units with up to 8 bedrooms, I believe, is what is allowed under VN. But I just sort of wanted to say that. I will get up and say it at town meeting. I just think that the board would do itself a favor if it gave a negative recommendation to this, just not based on personalities and emotions and everything else, but based on looking at, is this an appropriate designation for this area of the island? Does it fit into the larger context of what we're trying to do, or what you're trying to do and the Plus people are trying to do? So I'd like to see it sort of decided along those lines. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, good evening. Bradford Bowen, my wife Susie Kraft Bowen, 47A. For the record, we'd like to say that no, we do not want to change from VTEC to VN, as Rick's lawyer said that we'd like to be taken off that. We were not asked, so want that on record. Then I'd like to ask a couple questions to the board.
Please.
I'm not overly bright when it comes to all this. It's kind of new. I've been doing some research. I've certainly, because I'm a landowner with my wife here. I don't quite understand, I guess my theme is, how a person can make a mistake and do something completely illegal and then go and change the zoning and then think that he can still use the building that he put up illegally to fit into new zoning that he wants to get to. And one point I want to come up to, and unfortunately, Nat, this might go towards you a little bit. I'm not picking on you.
No,
but as I drive by this illegal building, I see 3 propane tanks and I see 3 hookups. So my question to the board is, does an owner call Yates Gas and just say, please give me 3 installations, or does the service person or the installer from Yates Gas, does he need to see paperwork and then sign off when he's done saying the job was, I'm a licensed person, the job was professionally done and safe, and then sign off on something?
If inspected by the town inspector, yes, inspector.
You gotta have
it gets inspected by the plumbing gas inspector. It was a permit pull. I'm not sure how, if the building was built without a permit. That building was built without a permit.
Yeah. So I'm just bringing that
I don't
up
know.
so the board can understand how illegal this was done. And there's 3 propane tanks and there's 3 hookups. And this guy had a try when he didn't have a permit to put up a try. So I don't want to keep pounding it. Other people have things to say. I also just want to say that this has gotten way too personal. I think a lot has been put on our shoulders as neighbors to try to come together and come up with a solution. And I think time has really gone a long way on this subject, and I really recommend the board to make a decision and get away from the personal. I don't want to be a Hatfield or whatever the other one was. I just want to be Brad and Susie and move on with our life.
Can you stay there for a second?
Yeah.
Can you hold on for a
Yeah,
second?
yeah.
I just wanted to go to Leslie for a second. I think she had something she needed to bring on, please.
I just wanted to clarify that, the building wasn't built without a permit. It was modified and not totally in compliance with the permit that was issued. And it has come to our attention that, some neighbors did alert certain staff in the building division, and they did not properly follow up on their complaints. And now that we are aware of that, there is an active enforcement investigation that's going on with the building code officials at Plus. So they are reviewing it, and they're going to see, what may need to happen there.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think we're done. I'm done. And we want to thank you for addressing the
But
situation.
I just want to I have to say something now. Okay, see, there was a permit, so there you go.
Okay.
So there's no way, you can't build a birdhouse here without somebody knowing if it doesn't have a permit. So here's the thing, right? As a board, when we hear about the master plan, we hear, when you hear that referred to, it sort of loosely gets said. The zoning here, we look at things like what can happen. Even though it seems like we're sort of, changing zoning, well, it's a good thing we did because it was RC2. Okay? And I can tell you, you would have wanted that change. VTech, I don't even know how it got to VTech. I don't even know what year did that happen. Like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I don't know.
I'm not sure. I would say maybe 2007, 2009, around there.
We didn't even have those districts invented till in that time frame. There was no other district. Huh? Okay, but what was it before that? RC2, which is insanity. So this is sort of like heavy commercial 1 acre instead of crazy anything goes commercial 8 acre. Okay, just keeping you dialed in. Okay.
Yep.
So we're not trying to give something away. We're not trying to. This is an odd situation, just similar to what you just saw with the little the restaurant at 130 Pleasant. It's kind of the same thing. We're just stuck. Well, nothing we say is good enough, right enough for everybody. It's complicated. Okay. If this land got sold, that's all I think about. This got sold. What can happen here is, I guarantee you, if it ever got sold, it ain't going to just sit there like it is now. It's going to be developed. It'll be like a situation like we had at Marble Way where nobody liked it and it was all allowed right across the street and they never even realized it. So we get caught in these things occasionally where there's neighbor issues, but you got to look at what can happen, what they're asking for. Okay, you could say we're helping them by changing it to allow the apartment part, which exists illegally or not, right? However, they're waiving tons of stuff that could happen. So it's sort of like making the apartment legal through zoning, but taking away a lot of other stuff that could happen in that district. So I know it's contentious, but that's the reality of it.
Right.
I hate the whole thing. I want it to go away and just leave. But they tried to get R20 last year, right? Okay. Everybody in the neighborhood across the street has R20. They were against the R20. it's like we're against, no matter what we say or what they want, we're against it. So I don't know what to say. I mean, it's just like, I don't know, tear the house down, make it into a dwelling. I don't know. I mean,
Well,
it's
can I just-
unbelievable.
All right, hold on,
Do you
hold on.
think that they should tear their house down?
Just,
Well, can I
Jimmy,
just add to
that's
that
fine.
for 1 second? From what you just said, can I just add to that?
Yeah.
do me one favor. I know there's a motion with this. I really appreciate it. Just please make sure that the comments direct through the chair. And I just worry about a little back and forth.
Yep.
But thank you. Go ahead,
So,
please.
Mr. Chair, can I just add to that?
No, please, please.
And I think Karen's going to speak next, and I want to make sure I get my numbers right here, but that dwelling went in under a VTEC, and I think the setback has to be 80 feet. It's right on our road. So using Mizzenmast and that address, then the setback's fine off of Mizzenmast. But now he's saying he has to use our common driveway for whatever he does there in the future. He's insisting that he comes on to Appleton using our common driveway with 47. Well, that property's supposed to be 80 feet back if he's going to use Appleton. It's about 10 or 15 feet from the road. I can't measure it because I can't go on the property.
Way out.
So that's kind of a little dilemma he has. That if he wants to use 47 Appleton as an address, that house has to be moved. Because you're supposed to have an 80-foot setback. In VTEC, am I not correct, Karen?
That's the first I've heard that one.
Hold on.
But,
well,
could be true.
I don't want to get into whether there's a setback violation or not, but the setback in VTEC's 30 feet for the front yard.
Okay.
For the front yard.
It'll be 30
Okay.
feet from the layout of the house.
We're all set. Thank you for your
No,
time.
thank you. I
Appreciate
really
very much.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Make a decision. Let's move on.
We're going to have to one way or another, trust me at this point. But I want to keep things open for the audience to be able to address this first. So anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi,
Hi.
Julie Wood, 47B Appleton Road. Again, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I don't want to go through all the emotions that we've already talked about. But what is really, it's been really stressful on our neighborhood. There's been a lot of unnecessary drama. And what I keep coming back to is that the burden of this illegally built building, which was permitted for a salt box garage and then was turned into a triplex that I share a driveway with. The burden of this debacle is being forced upon the neighbors to solve when it shouldn't be our responsibility. We're burdened with resolving an issue that should be between the town, the building department, the inspectors, and the property owner. The lack of enforcement has pitted one neighbor against another, which has created anxiety and resentment. The suggestion that this can be fixed by a zoning change makes no sense. The condemned building under law is supposed to be demolished or brought back to its original permit. Is a precedent being set that the town won't enforce building code violations? Is the precedent being set that anyone can build whatever they want and then beg forgiveness and reach compliance by changing the zoning? I don't want to be here. We have lived in peace at the end of Appleton Road for, until the last 2 years. But now, when the Craft Bones and myself have invited people over to our homes and they've crossed the shared driveway, they have gotten no trespassing orders. That we have had to go back down to the police to explain that people were invited to our house.
Mm-hmm.
But our neighbors have, called for no trespassing orders. So it's really not working. The shared driveway is a real problem. I wish that the whole property, 43 Appleton, would use the existing access off of Mizzenmast Road and keep their whole compound, to themselves, and then we wouldn't have this issue on Appleton Road. It's been stressful. So I agree, we need to resolve this and take the burden off of the neighbors to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hi. Go ahead. No.
Mr. Chair and Board, I'm Karen Baird from 50 Appleton Road. And I am too fed up with having to come here and try and keep a neighborhood that is very special to everybody that lives there. The thought that our only option for this property is VN is ridiculous. Lug 1, Lug 2, Lug 3, we're all open to that. We are not open to backdooring violations of a current zone by giving him a zone that would allow him to keep a building. He was permitted for a garage and a shop. He literally tore the entire building down except for one wall. And then he built a 3-story triplex with 6 bedrooms with no building, structural, plumbing, heating, electrical, structural permits. So as far as I'm concerned, he did build an entire dwelling without one inspection. Now, if I did that on my property and came back and said, oh, do me a favor, change me to VN so I can keep that building, I don't think that that would happen. And I think that there is a precedent being set here that if you just keep coming back to the zoning board, eventually one of the zones will work. Well, we're not saying that we don't want him to change his zoning. We're saying that we don't want it to be the zoning that allows him to keep a building that had all of us been notified through the mail, like you're supposed to notify your butters, that you're going to build an apartment building. All of us would have been here 5 years ago and said, no, not on Appleton. If the permit had gone through the zoning officer's office, Marcus certainly wouldn't have allowed an apartment building in VTEC. You're not allowed a secondary, a tertiary, or an apartment building in VTEC. So it has been built illegally. And I think to backdoor compliance by any board in the town is wrong. And I don't think that the neighbors should have to constantly compromise for this family. Now, I understand that Arthur said that he would come up with a covenant at some point in time that would restrict all these things that they're willing to give up. Well, I was here in 97 and again in 2004 when the original covenant for this property was drawn up that said that there would be no access and no utilities taken off of Appleton Road. That covenant was completely squashed by this board in 2004, and all those covenants were washed away, and they were not only given a driveway off of Appleton, but they've taken utilities off of Appleton. The electricity was taken from my house underground onto that property. That is not what the original covenant said that was passed by this board. So it seems that as soon as we get a new board, all the rules change. So to give them a VN jurisdiction and say that they'll eventually write up these covenants and give up all these things, I don't believe them. I don't trust anything that they say because everything that we have been told by this family from the very beginning has been about trying to solve their family financial issues, their family argument issues. When the driveway was granted, it was granted because Lee and her sister Leanne were not speaking. So apparently John's land was landlocked and could no longer come out the back way. So the planning board was forced, because his land was landlocked, to give him access onto Appleton Road. So that was the first family problem that was solved here at the planning board level. And now this one is because last year it was because Maria was getting divorced and Raphael needed a house. So we were.
Can we not get into the personals too
No,
much?
because the story is about personal stuff, Barry.
I think we've gotten that information, and I want to be a little ginger about this. That's all.
Okay.
That's all. Just
Well,
respectfully.
There's many board members here who do not know the history of this. And for 21 years, I've lived with the history of trying to solve this particular property owner's family situations. I don't think that it should be our compromise to fix things that the town inspectors and building inspectors and zoning officers don't want to do. I don't think that's fair. I mean, Marcus is the zoning office and he had no ruling on this particular issue. I'm like, how does the zoning officer not have any input into a zoning change? I was shocked when I saw his email and his recommendation as no recommendation. To me, so now it's my job. So I don't understand why we need to come here year after year for different zoning changes until we get to the right one. What's wrong with Lug 2? You know why he doesn't want lug 2? Because he can't keep his building, because he can't make it an apartment, because he can't get income. He said it's for his family. Well, up until last year, none of his family lived in that building. So what's wrong with lug 2? It fits in the area. Lug 3 is right there. There's nothing wrong with that, except he can't keep that building. He can't have an apartment. So you're asking us to compromise, and we're telling you we're not willing to compromise on this. And I don't think it's our job to fix his illegal activity. And I would ask the board to please not enable him to continue to do illegal activity and then just get like a little pat on the back. Oh, don't worry, we'll change zoning and it'll go away. I don't think that's appropriate. So I'm asking for a negative recommendation on this citizen's warrant for the second year in a row. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Just one thing I want to say. I know this can be somewhat difficult at times, but this is a citizen's article, so they have a right to be able to bring these things forward to be heard. And so, and I understand that. It's just, again, that's the way this process does work. So they do have that right eventually at some stage to bring these things back forward again. You know, okay, but we're not even at that stage yet. All I'm saying is respectfully, as a citizen's warrant article, our job is we have to listen as well, but we can't deny them that right to bring it forward. Okay, so I don't want to go back and forth. I just want to bring it up. Hi, thank you.
Judith Perkins, 52 Appleton,
Hi.
and I just want to be on the record that my husband and I are against changing the zoning for this.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Baird, good evening.
Dan Baird, and everything my wife had says, I will back up 100%. That's all I want to say about it, because there's been enough said about it. If I start, it'll be worse. Enough said.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, quick. Yep.
Campbell Sutton, I would just like to bring up one more point that listening to Nat reminded me that, and it probably should have been on our qualifications. I mean, when you take a look at our citizens warrant list of things that we'll support, right, this does not hit a lot of them. I think underlying the problem here, and the same with last year and the change, is that the property is not currently in compliance with its current zoning at VTEC. And it just doesn't seem to me that should result in any change of zoning, because they're not in compliance with what they have. Once they bring their property into compliance with the zone that they're in, okay, now you can talk about moving on to another zone, right? That's just what I wanted to say.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Mr. Reed.
Just a couple of points of clarification. First of all, with regard to the apartment building definition, which is a little difficult to read in the bylaw, but we read the provision as to subdivision, the subdividability of property as being alternative to, a situation in which the uses can be, or the activities can be accommodated within the boundaries of the lot. In any event, it's a special permit process, and if the zoning is changed and we come in with the special permit application for the quote apartment building end quote use, that will be before the board along with all other appropriate considerations and conditions that might be applied. The proposal of a covenant to take away certain uses, that would be absolute. We would give that to you. It would be executed by the owner, by Lee Papali-Kalman. It would be executed by her. It would be recordable, and it would be held in escrow by the planning staff with an express agreement that at such time as the zoning became final as a result of the passage of the article and then the approval by the Attorney General's office, that the planning office would immediately proceed to record it so that it would be a binding covenant. I believe that's been done on at least one occasion in the past with a zoning change. Again, there's obviously a lot of background on this with the neighborhood. There's no proposal before you to put this in anything other than the VN district that our article proposes. It can't be put in a LUG 2 district without there being an article for that purpose, and there isn't one at the town meeting. The choices are keep it in VTEC, in which I submit that there could be considerably more. Now, I don't mean to present this as a threat to anybody, but the fact is that there could be much more intense uses in the VTEC zoning than in the VN. VN, we could go out tomorrow and start with all kinds of additional uses, retail uses that are much softer if we had that zoning, but we're taking those away, so that won't be part of it. And the offensive uses that would be able to be done in VTEC won't be there anymore. Is VN the ideal zone to put this property in? Well, maybe there is no ideal zone to put it in. Granted, the existing uses on the property, the existing conditions on the property, and so on. Now, as far as access from Mizzenmast is concerned, the strip of land that is referred to as being Mizzenmast Extension, and which is being used to some extent, and probably primarily at the present time for access to the property along the westerly boundary of our locus, we have no rights in. That is land bank owned property, and the only legal access to the property is from Appleton Road. As far as getting access from Mizzenmast is concerned, the land bank cannot grant an easement. They can't grant rights of any sort in real estate that they own without a 2/3 roll call vote of both houses of the general court. And the result of that is that, and it's always been the policy of the state, of the legislature, that they will not pass such legislation without there being a compensating benefit to the public. So the result is that it's not possible for the owners of the property to get the right to use Mizzenmast. Appleton Road is the only legal access and the only way that it can be, in fact, used. I think that covers the points I wanted to raise.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Karen again. I just want to give you a little bit of history. Right next to Lipa Polly's lot is the land bank lot. She used to own that lot. And so back when she sold that lot to the land bank, she gave away her rights to that cul-de-sac that you see at the end. So she actually created the situation where she had to come off of Appleton because the original covenant said there should be no access off of Appleton and only access and utilities off of Mizzenmast. By her selling that piece of property, she gave away her rights from Mizzenmast and therefore was forced to come off of Appleton. And that is why the covenant was broken, because they could no longer get out there because Land Bank owned the land that abutted hers. So by selling one of her lots, she then placed her own lot in a position where she had no more access. Mm-hmm. And then once again, Appleton Road was compromised and the covenant was broken because they had to come out onto our road. But she originally did have access to her land through that first lot. It was upon selling it that all of a sudden she lost access to that paved cul-de-sac that was her access to the 9 acres that she was originally given to by her mother.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the history on why the covenant had to be changed.
Okay. Okay, great. Go ahead.
It's a question, two questions for Mr. Reed, if you don't mind. I know you're very knowledgeable about land use law here, so I hope you don't mind my asking, why is this not spot zoning? It looks to me as though it's pretty clearly spot zoning, and moreover, it looks to me like what I would have called contract zoning, where you further limit away from what's even within the general provisions. And I'd like to I try not to be my own lawyer. I wanted to know if you could explain to me how Massachusetts law treats spot zoning and contract zoning.
I think spot zoning, the issue of spot zoning gets raised a lot more often than a court has ever determined it to be applicable. There's a fine line on all of this stuff. Right now, it's the VTEC district, as you look at it, as an island, which has only 2 properties in it. Could you say that that's spot zoning?
Yes.
We propose to change the whole zone as it now is, and certainly granted that it's in VTEC now, changing the whole district, even though it only contains the
Except your neighbors disagree
limited number
with
of
that.
properties, would certainly not be spot zoning. Now, if one of the owners wants out of it, and we want to stay in the proposed change, does that make our situation spot zoning? Under those circumstances, I don't think it does. But it's a fine line in all of these cases.
Yeah.
As far as contract zoning is concerned, well, you're speaking of the covenant in terms of
At least some. I used to teach this stuff. I'm sorry. As I understand it, or as the general case books treat it, if you start saying you're promising to further limit what is going to happen, and depending on what the law in the state is, some states say you can do that if you have covenants. Some states treat that differently, and I was just asking if you had thoughts about, it could enlighten me about how that works in Massachusetts.
Again, that has generally been applied in situations of large projects where there are considerations totally outside of, the land uses that are proposed on the property. I know that as a practical matter, there have been other instances in which limitations have been done in order to fit something in as far as a zoning change is concerned in a way that would work. Could it be challenged as being contract zoning? Or anything can be challenged. I can't think of a case where that would, where that issue has come up in connection with this.
Thank you. I mean, no disrespect. I really wanted to hear what you had to say, so thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Anyone else on the board? Go ahead, because I got something I want to bring up too.
First of all, I don't think there's a win-win here. I feel sorry for the owners, the neighbors, the planning board being put in a position to try and resolve something that's been ongoing. But I'll just bring out a couple of just interesting notes. This reminds me of something that's come up in the past annual town meetings, where a threat of possibilities, and we're looking at 156, a complex that could be going up that was once brought up to rezone it to maybe look at a total of 12 buildings on 4 lots, primary, secondary, and tertiary. We voted that down as a town, I think 2 different times before the threat was actually realized. I'm not saying that to scare the neighbors. I'm just pointing out something that could take effect. It looks like it was reduced from an RC2 back in 2007 to the VTEC, which wasn't necessarily maybe the best, but it was an improvement. And now with the VN, doesn't seem like it's the best for the neighbors. It might be an improvement for obvious reasons for the owner to meet maybe some building code violations, which I'm not in support of. I don't like condoning changing zonings to meet that, to accept the violations. But the spot zoning, I don't think really applies to this particular use. It would have been nice at the time when RC2 was there to change it to the LUG3. that maybe would have been the proper time to do it. But since it was reduced, it was still an improvement. No matter what our recommendation is going to be, whether it's positive or negative or nothing, it's still going. It's a citizen article, as Barry, our chair, had said. It's still going to go to the town meeting, regardless of what we say. I understand if we give it a positive, it may look like we're endorsing it. If we give it a negative, obviously it will look like it's opposed. But it's still going to be heard. Everyone's still going to have another say. It's round 8 all over again. So we haven't heard the last of it. I apologize. At some point, hopefully it will get resolved. But I just wanted to bring out that point about, what the threats are. I don't like being threatened, but they are real and they potentially could happen. I just wanted to point that out. That's all.
I got something I'm going to say, but I'll defer to
No,
you first if you'd like.
I appreciate the comments about the land bank. I think that's important that everyone knows. I didn't know that Karen was the reason. I know the house. I've been to that house the land bank owns 100 times. And I didn't know that. Okay? I just knew that they didn't have technical rights. I thought it just went to Phyllis's house and that was it or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if the neighbors, the abutters, you don't have to get back up. I just want to say this to you. I don't know if you'd want to go to LUG too. I bet you would. I mean, you really can't do too much in LUG too. So I just thought that was interesting to hear. If the article came forward for that, with you attached and the other person above you, the other guy that was here the last meeting, just very interested in that. That if you would be in favor of going to LUG too, or an LUG district regardless. So that was interesting. But I mean, the thing about this is it's going to get blown up at town meeting anyway. This stuff is terrible going to town meeting with controversy because everybody gets even more confused because there's so many people. It has to have a 2/3 majority. I don't see that happening no matter what. Okay, I'm in the same spot I was last year, except it was R20 instead of the. I don't think the guy should tear his house down. I don't think that's right. I mean, even if he's wrong, I mean, telling someone they have to tear their house down is a pretty extreme thing. I mean, I think that. Okay, but it could be done by modifying the house. You don't have to actually just tear it down and more C and D go automatically. So, there is no answer. I think the VTEC was more spot zone than what they're asking for. But that's just, I don't know, okay? All I'm going to say to you all, careful what you wish for with VTEC they sell. That's all I'm going to say. On record, saying it for the 100th time. What can happen here with people with money and wherewithal. Danny, you know what wherewithal means. Well, that's right. But so we've created nobody to have commercial. That's an interesting comment. Okay, so we should have just left Darcy too, so he could just build anything, and it'd still be our fault. Okay, well that tells you the story right there. So I leave it at that.
So let me just say something. This isn't ready for prime time yet in my book. It's not. I mean, here we are again looking at this, and there's no, and believe me, we've looked at Appleton Road before for a while. It's not the first time. This isn't the first property we've looked at either. And I get it. This is, there's always emotion that's involved with it. There's turmoil. Not a good environment. Let me finish what I'm going to say, please. And then, yeah. One thing that impresses me is that there really is kind of a mishmash of what's going on here, especially when I look at the zoning behind it and then what some people want to do as well, too. No question about it. You see different zones that are out here. You've got land bank property you're trying to consider as well too. As Judith said, and this may well turn itself into spot zoning by making another change again that may not be consistent with the area, which would bring up a whole different set of issues that are going to start coming up. That's why I'm saying I don't think it's ready yet. But what do I think could be ready? And I brought this up beforehand. I think there's an opportunity here for the neighborhood to begin to work together to define what it wants to do. And we've done this before through the planning board, which would be to put something essentially like a mini area plan in place. This gives you all an opportunity to come to the table and begin to define what it is that you guys need for your neighborhood, what you want for your neighborhood. It's a very deliberate and guided process. Leslie can speak to that personally, having been through these before. Some of our board members have sat in on this well too. Again, one of our board members would definitely sit on it. But working through an area plan to me has always been a productive process. And in the end, sometimes things get discussed you don't want to talk about. But it's good. At least now it's up on the table. And as a community, as a neighborhood, you can begin to define what it is. To me, that's where I'd like to see this go. I mean, one thing that comes right to mind with the land bank property, maybe something could be negotiated for right of first refusal with this property so that there's a sense in the future, okay, great. If it ever gets sold, maybe it just becomes land bank property. I don't know, but there's potentials here that I see, and I think what would be remiss is for those potentials to be lost. You all live here. You all got a destiny here at this point. I'd like to either take no action on this or give it a negative recommendation, but in the comments, I would really love to see you guys work together to make something happen that basically says, this is our neighborhood. This is what we see for it. This is how we propose begin to really change things and make it happen so that we're guiding our future. So that's my 2 cents. No, please, come on down. I hate to bring you down, but again, it's being recorded. That's all. But thanks.
Judith Perkins. I just wondered if you all have driven down the dead ender part to see, I don't know, it's a neighborhood, but it's just a dead end street. We are the neighborhood, just us. So I just wanted you to know, it's not like Pine Valley neighborhood. It's really just 6 of us on the street.
But it is also Appleton Road as well. That's what I'm saying to you.
Right, because they would get all the traffic, et cetera. Or
Right. And as we're always looking at all of that, because if something does happen, here we go. There's going to have to be responses toward it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. But that's why I'm saying I just think this process may be a slight bit better, and I'd like to put it off and just see what comes out of the process. Truly.
Brad Bowen, 47A Appleton Road. I'd just like to be put on record that I would volunteer my time to sit down with people on the opposite side of the aisle and see if we can get something worked out. I do have the time, so just put that
Thank
on
you.
record.
No, I appreciate that. And again, that's part of that process is to bring you all on board at this point. No closed doors here on these type of area, on these little mini area plan things, or I don't know, Leslie may have a different thing to call it. But
I think in this case, maybe a full-blown area plan is not necessary,
Right.
but getting together a neighborhood work group to talk about various issues facing their neighborhood and how we can all deal with those in the best way for everyone would be helpful. And I agree with the board that taking no action on this article right now is probably the best way to go to give everyone a little more time. We're talking about a special town meeting that's not too far off. To work out some of these details. There's a lot of emotions and a lot of other things that are at play. And, I do think that, the covenant concept that's proposed by Attorney Reed, has some merit to it. But again, all of that needs a lot more research and attention.
Thank you. So, I mean, hopefully, and that's something that when we get ready to make a motion on this, I would dearly love to see that in the commentary that we usually post as well, too, because that goes out to the general public to say, well, what's the intent behind it when we do that? So,
Move to close the public hearing.
well, hang on.
Oh,
Let me
there's more.
just be,
Okay.
yeah, please. No, I don't
I'm
want to
sorry, I
leave
thought we'd
anyone
been all the
out.
way through.
Please come on down.
My name is David Humphrey, and I just wanted to point out as an observer the parallel between the earlier instance of the residential garage permit and this garage. And I just think that it would be unfortunate to set a precedent or let this lapse. I'm not qualified to speak to what ought to be done, whether it should be torn down completely or modified. But if I had a residential garage and I saw that this went unadjudicated, unenforced or whatever, I would certainly be tempted to put a toilet in my studio residential garage. And make it an apartment.
Can I move to close the public hearing?
Is there any, I just want to
Okay.
make sure there's no one else.
I mean, that, just real quick, that last comment, I mean, I understand what the gentleman's saying, but that's not, I mean, we can't make a motion to have him tear his house down. You know what I mean? We're just trying to go through a citizen article that, as Barry said earlier, they have every right to do this. I mean, there is a
Pointing out a parallel.
yeah, I understand that. There's a lot of, I go in a lot of houses and I see a lot of illegal stuff. You think I say anything about it? No. I do my job and leave. I mean, if everybody got busted for every illegal thing they do, the island would empty. So it's complicated discussion. This is different because it's exposed and open and everybody knows about it. I mean, the area plan idea, I've been on 3 of those, makes a lot of sense. As far as what Leslie said, there's a lot of, we had a fire down in that area a couple of years ago. There's sewer and no water, kind of weird. We did a lot of zoning changes down there already. That were all RC2 stuff. But there are some issues that we could cover under that. For everybody, not just this situation. It could be, there's a lot of other people that may have stuff that they have concern with, so. But I agree with Barry. I mean, it's definitely a negative or take no action in my opinion, but it's not going away, okay? If that's the problem, we just wish there could be a compromise. I mean, I don't know, it's tough. So.
Go ahead.
Hi, Karen
Hi.
Ward, Baird, 50 Appleton. I just wondered if Arthur's client would be inclined to compromise with the apartment building instead of making it, a 3-bedroom and 1-bedroom apartment. Would they make it into a single family dwelling instead of like an apartment building? It just doesn't go on Appleton Road. Like, it just doesn't fit. It just seems like, why won't they compromise with what it is that they're looking to do? Why won't they take it back to its original use and go to VN? We'd be willing to have it as a commercial space like it was originally permitted for. And also another reminder to the board, the sewer on Appleton is privately owned by 4 people on Appleton who paid to bring it down. I know there are attempts by the town to take over private sewers, but this will not be one of them. So just in case anybody was not aware of that aspect of the situation. Thank you.
Well, our client isn't here, so I can't ask them specifically what they would agree to or not. But the apartment building, quote unquote, is a special permit use, and all of that would come up in connection with that. And basically, the only way, I don't believe that any of the structures on the site would qualify for a tertiary dwelling, so the only way that we could have a third dwelling, as Aaron just suggested, would be to treat the lot as being subject to a apartment building designation, which can happen only in the VN district, as far as any district in the country overlay is concerned. But that certainly, if we were able to be rezoned in that way, that's certainly something we could look at and consider, and the board could consider.
Okay, thank you. All right. I know what you've been trying to do, so
I thought people were done.
No,
Last chance. Move to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second? Motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously, and the pleasure of the board.
I'd like to move that we give it a negative recommendation, but include within the comments a suggestion that there be further work on the within the neighborhood to try to develop a more compatible plan going forward.
Do I hear a second?
Can you just
please
clarify something? All of your motions that are negative say take no action. It's the same effect, but I just want to make sure you know.
Right. So that's what I understood it to mean. So it's a negative recommendation, meaning that the public meeting should the town meeting should not act on it.
Yes.
Right. I understand everybody. Right. But that in the commentary, which we've done before, we can say that we believe it would be fruitful for there to be further work within this small community to try to reach a more mutually appropriate resolution of competing views or whatever, how you'll write it. So you'll do better than that, I'm sure.
I'll draft it and send it to you.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion's made and seconded. Discussion on that issue. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. Okay, that's going to bring us to Article 61, which is the rear lot subdivision provisions to allow any approval required or approval not required plan to qualify for this development option. It's a citizen's petition. Mr. Cohen, this is yours, right? Please.
So,
Can I just say something real quick? Mr. Chairman, just before he
please.
starts.
Yeah.
I did draft a motion for you all to consider for this article, and Holly has it. She'll project it on the
Thank
screen.
So at the last public hearing, I think it was Mr. McClure who suggested that he'd like to see more restriction on this being used to create additional lots, which it wouldn't, but I understand why he wanted to see it that way, and also the suggestion of it creating subdivisions based on speculation. And I think that Leslie's drafting actually handles it perfectly, because it would essentially allow the rear lot subdivision to be done when you have either a no waiver approval required plan, approval not required plan, or a endorsed approval not required plan that has gone through the appeal hearing. So essentially, if it's the two-step process we talked about last time. So it doesn't allow for any more options. I mean, any more density or subdivision, but it does allow for this program or for this development option to be done in a way so that you don't end up with all of these little two-lot subdivisions with all of these little stub roads, which create untaxable, unusable land that's really better off as a driveway or parking area in practical terms.
Go ahead.
I've not.
Were you here for this, or are you under the?
I was on the phone. I was.
She was on the she was on the phone for
I
this.
was there every minute. I promise.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I know. I just couldn't remember if it was the other you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Could you go back a step, Mr. Cohen, and say what you're trying to accomplish originally? And then, Leslie, could you explain why this is more limiting, just to be sure that comes through? since I've just seen this now.
Sure. The program allows for, or this development option is essentially to eliminate these little stub roads, but it was proposed so that you could only have it if you had a plotting plan that showed that you didn't need any waivers. And of course, what that does is it leaves the option where the planning board does approve subdivisions where it grants waivers, but then can't use the yard sale program, the rear lot subdivision program. So what this would do is say, if you already have an approval required plan, you can then essentially swap it out to eliminate that stub road. But both of those would be done through planning board approval, first through a subdivision approval, and then secondly through a special permit. So there's no of right anywhere here. So it takes I had originally proposed this idea where it was all done through the special permit process, and Leslie's amendment requires you to get an AR plan approved through the appeal period and then come back and say, I'd now like a special permit to eliminate the stub road, which could or could not be denied depending on the situation.
And you mentioned that part of your rationale had to do with the paper lot sale, yard sale program. That's not addressed in this?
No. I might have used that word by accident.
Okay, thank you. That's
And I'll tell you, I have two clients who have approval required subdivision plans. One of them has like a big round driveway like this in front of it, or like a stub road that looks like your desk in front of it that doesn't make any sense. And the other one has like just a driveway that goes back behind it, and it has like this Pac-Man shaped lot. And what they're doing is creating exactly what we don't want in these little one-offs. So I think that this creates no more subdivisions, but allows for more sensible subdivisions.
Thank you.
Leslie, did you want to chime in?
Well, I thought Stephen actually explained my amendment quite well. So the board at the last hearing when we talked about this had some concerns about speculation.
Yeah.
So, Stephen's original article didn't quite address that. And so the change would be to, do what you're doing now and to allow the rear lot to be utilized for an already endorsed approval not required plan or an already approved and endorsed definitive plan subdivision.
Okay.
So there's really two steps for people to get public notice, that sort of thing.
Thanks.
Yeah. Board members, anything else that you have on
Just
this?
a quick question.
Please.
Leslie, what would this do to the 20-foot layout road versus the 40 with the original bylaw? And what would this do for like 4 meter time with the entire?
It wouldn't change the Rocket application.
You'll
If
have to do the frontage averaging around the circle, or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
The circle.
So if someone came in with a reduced right-of-way,
Layout, right?
yeah, a reduced layout, right now, they could not utilize the rear lot
Correct,
provision.
yeah.
They would have to, set aside the land for the roadway. They'd have to construct some kind of traveled way.
Yeah.
Now, they would still go through that process. You would either approve the subdivision with the waivers or not. We would finalize all the paperwork. It would get recorded. There would be the appeal period. If the appeal period passed and no one appealed it, they could then bring that plan back in, apply for a special permit to convert that to a rear lot. So again, you don't increase the number of lots.
This is good.
It's just a different way of getting.
This is the flaw in the original because of that 20-foot issue versus the 40. So this is good. And it's the 2 bites at the apple instead of 1 as well. So I like it. Yeah, for the board. So when Cormac was here, and he brought up a couple of points that I think you fixed, which is good.
The other thing I think this does, without really getting complicated, is, and I think maybe it was both John and Fritz that brought up the point of that the rear lot subdivision potentially create some windfall for someone, depending, if they
Still a
have.
special permit.
Yeah, well, that was going to be
You can
my
get,
point.
you can get rid of stuff.
When someone comes in and says, I want this land that was a road back in, and that's going to give me, more whatever, the board could say, okay, well, we'll approve it, but we're limiting your ground cover, or we'll approve it, but we're limiting, whatever, it's sort of case by case. And I think that doing it this way lets you use your judgment on each situation, so that there's no right to sort of overdevelop for this option.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense now.
Okay.
Better than it did last year.
Good. Board members, anything else? It's a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone would like to comment on this.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
And I'd
And
like to make a motion to give this a positive recommendation.
okay, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Great, thank you.
Okay.
And that's going to bring us to Article 63, zoning bylaw amendment to confirm that height allowances for new and existing structures within certain flood zones are permitted by right, and that a special permit is not required. Mr. Reed.
Thank you very much. This whole subject goes back to several years ago when I was working on a situation involving several waterfront properties, and with the changes in the required minimum elevation above sea level datum for the first floor of structures, that was on a collision course basically with the 30-foot height limit under the zoning bylaw. And I put in a warrant article at that time, which passed in 2015, which, as I had written it at the time, allowed new structures 28 feet above the required minimum first floor elevation. My theory being that on a 30-foot height limitation, you'd be looking normally at the first floor being 2 feet at least above grade. So you would then have 28 feet above that, which would be the equivalent of 30. And then for existing structures, language in there provided that it would be 35 feet overall height maximum, where it would be in a flood district. It passed that way. The following, and when I put in my article, well, first of all, let me tell you why I put in the article. Somehow this all wound up in the special permit section under height rather than simply being in the height section of the bylaw. It was always conceived of and was written as being of right, but it showed up in the special permit section. It then got amended, and when I put the article in this last fall, it had slipped by me that there had been an amendment in 2016 which changed the provisions that I had to instead provide that the height would not, and same for new and existing structures, would not exceed 30 feet above the minimum height that would comply with the floodplain requirements, which is fine. I simply hadn't realized that change had been made. And it also added the provision that in the commercial downtown district, CDT, which allows maximum height to be established by special permit anyway, that it would be the special permit provisions of that would continue to apply. Anyway, now that I see that I was using the wrong language to amend, I'm now amending the language as it now is in the bylaw simply by taking that language and taking it out of section C of, or paragraph C, or whatever you want to call it. Let's call it paragraph C of section 17, and put it into a new D, which would read correctly that it's a permitted, that it's as of right that you go to the 30 feet above the first floor elevation if you're in the flood district, and with keeping the provision that obviously you can go to a special permit in the CDT district, but it would be a matter of right other than that, which I think is what was always intended. I really don't know how well this all wound up coming under the special permit section, because it doesn't read that way.
Mm-hmm. Leslie, Holly, did you have anything you want to add to this?
No, we support the article, and we've written a motion for your consideration.
Okay. Board members, did you have any?
Could I?
Yeah, please. No, go right ahead.
So you're basically just shifting where it is so it aligns with what you were trying to do originally, right? What does this mean in terms of a structure that would be located in a floodplain outside the downtown? What?
The main language here is specifically that. CDT, the height is determined by special permit. Other than that, the maximum height, as it now reads in the bylaw, is 30 feet above the elevation of the first floor, if you're in the, in those flood
Anywhere
zone
else,
districts.
but for the downtown, it's determined by special permit.
Right.
So downtown could be higher, it could be lower.
Yeah, I mean, typically it would be higher, but yeah, it could be established by special permit in any event.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I just have a quick question. Just because, it's been called rising seawater, and I know that flood zone and town has become higher, two buildings have been elevated considerably, and I'm just wondering does anybody have any thoughts on what our heights are there? Like, are we going up, is it 6 feet or 8 feet before you get to the first floor, or is that mobile number, like, does it change with the FEMA regulations? I'm just, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It just keeps getting much taller.
It's an elevation above grade
Mhm.
that we're dealing. I'm sorry, it's an the required elevation of the first floor is an elevation above sea level datum. That's the way the flood requirements are written. They establish the height, and it used to be that it was 8 feet above sea level datum in 1934. It's now up to about 11 feet, I think, that it's required to be. It went up by about 3 feet a few years ago. And that's all subject to change. And yes, there's the whole question of climate change and rising oceans and so on. And we can anticipate that there will be changes in the requirements in the future. And the point is that the height of the building will be determined by where it has to be. And in some cases, if you're in very low land, you're going to be up considerably higher above grade than you would if you're not.
Yeah, and Mr. E's right. It will be kind of interesting. I mean, one thing I can tell you from sitting on the Community Preservation Committee was that we had commissioned University of Florida with Nantucket Preservation Trust. They were working on the downtown, doing laser scanning for the downtown area. And one of the things they realized they could incorporate into that system was sea level rise. So not quite done yet. Holly's shaking her head profusely over there because she could probably tell you more too. Not ready to be all revealed yet, but I think it's going to be fascinating to see what comes out of it because they were using some really good statistical modeling to get there. But you'll be able to see what that begins to look like as well too, and that may lend some guidance toward the future as well. Did you want to chime in any further? And that's coming up as part of the resiliency plan, isn't it? Yes.
Yes, basically, I'm shaking my head because the town, along with PIN, along with the Preservation Trust, received a grant, the society with a grant, $75,000, to do the second phase of their laser
Excellent.
program. And what's coming out of that is going to be a fantastic workshop that's going to be tied in with the industry program. And there'll be more information about it. So I'm thinking about it, so I love it.
That makes it two of us. Yeah. Did you have something, sir?
No, but maybe I do. So along the lines of being geeky about that, the HDC, Holly and I have talked about this, and Holly was kind enough to come and present a Keeping History Above Water a presentation to a group of us a while back. But in any event, just so people know, the HCC has initiated discussion of matters that relate to this and that relate to future and to rules and regulations and guidelines. And we will be working through the coastal resiliency grants and funding with that group and developing things along those lines. So just so people are aware.
Yeah, no, good. Anyone else? Anyone in the audience wishing to comment on this? Final thoughts?
Move
Good.
to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously, and
Motion to approve the language changes.
Second.
so positive recommendation
Yes,
with those
positive.
changes.
Sorry.
No, don't be, that's okay. Just, that motion was made
Yeah.
and seconded. Discussion on that issue. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Thank you very much indeed.
Very much, good.
All right, so just a few last orders of business here. You've all had an opportunity to help to look through the continuation policy. Thank you, Leslie, for resurrecting that. It was a good thing, and it's just something to know that we've had out there, but just haven't maybe utilized in a while, and just keep it on the back burner for when we need it. Anything in additional to warrant articles for 2019 ATM?
So included in your packet were all of the motions that I've put together through Friday morning. That does not include a couple from tonight. I don't think I put anything in there for the articles tonight. So take a look at those if you have time to make sure I didn't miss anything. And then your comments that you wanted included, I've highlighted those in green so they'll be easy for you to see. So if anyone has any comments about the comments, please let me know. And I'm going to finalize a new draft, which I pretty much finished before the meeting today for your upcoming meeting on the 21st. So again, that's kind of the last opportunity for you all to make your comments and your recommendations. The original timeline, which I have not seen revised, included a FinCom meeting on the 21st with motions going to the select board on the 6th. So that first Wednesday after everyone comes back from February vacation. I don't know if that's been revised or not, but I think we should try to stick to the 21st and have everything wrapped up by then. I think you only have 3 articles on the agenda for that night, so that should be kind of easy.
4, actually, for the 21st.
Oh, 4.
Yeah, 4.
Oh, yeah, 4. So that's it.
Okay.
And don't forget, annual town meetings at 6 o'clock on Monday, April 1st.
Yeah.
And we'll post a meeting about 15 minutes ahead of time, just in case there's any last minute business.
Yep. I notice there's a note here about Mr. Glidden coming around, but I don't see him. Maybe
I don't see him.
that's okay. Maybe we can invite him to the NVNE to see, which is coming up on short term. But
That may actually be more applicable.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, so I don't want to let that off the radar. And just some reminders for deadlines at this point. There's a joint meeting coming up between the Select Board and the NPDC on this upcoming Wednesday at 6 p.m. about the hazard mitigation plan. If you haven't, make sure you get back to Eleanor to confirm whether you're going to be there or not. Our next special planning board meeting is on February 21st at 5 to hear the warrant articles and maybe any other additional business. Next scheduled meeting is on March 11th. Is there other business before the board? Yes,
I
ma'am.
just had 2 questions to Leslie. This looks like a very long agenda for town meeting, and I have to be on a business trip. I should leave the next day, but do you think this is going to run to 2 days, and would they be 2 days in sequence? Is that?
Typically, we get into zoning at either the end of the first night or going into the second night.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. I mean, it could be a
Well,
miracle
there's
meeting. No one
many
calls any articles.
financial matters. Okay, well, thank you.
We've had one where no zoning articles were called.
Okay.
But only
that
one.
won't be this one.
Only one. It was a good year.
And about the meeting on Wednesday, this is your project, I guess, Holly. This is for action that the select board takes action, or?
Yes, the select board will be the formal document signer, if you will, but this is to you in front of the NPC as well as the select board, and you basically say, this is our final stamp of approval, if you will, before FEMA says, okay, you're good to go.
So I've had comments from citizens, and I have some myself, that I think are going to be raised at that meeting. I just want you to be aware that they're probably going to be suggesting fine tuning, and what I've said is send these to Holly sooner rather than later. Is that the right answer?
That would be good. I have been told by our consultant, and our consultant will be there at the meeting, that right now it would take a lot of changes to do that, to actually give them changes to submit this to FEMA. So that would have to come into the amendment, but it's a living document. So living document, what we're going to keep.
But all I would say is if it's advertised as a hearing, at least the people who've asked me about it seem to think they'll have a chance to affect the document. Is that not true?
This is more of a review for their final adoption.
So I believe that comes up in Roman numeral 8. Do we have to open as a board prior to or at the time when it comes up?
As far as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is posted as a joint meeting.
Yes, it's not executive session.
It's just
Right.
because
Yeah.
of the number of people. It's just, you're in the audience.
Right, they're
and
just,
going like,
Make
"Hi,
sure
how
we
are
meet the
you?"
open meeting law.
Okay,
Exactly.
seven of us there, 6 of us.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But
the,
this isn't one of those ones, John, like, we're upstairs there.
Yeah, no,
This is different.
there have been meetings where we sat in the audience
Yes.
just because it was a
That's
joint,
it.
but we opened it and we closed it.
Mhm.
And we adjourned. So formally, just for the record.
and generally that's what you would want to do. That'll be up to Mr. Lowell to do that, to conduct that part of it if he's there that night too.
Another night, not at home.
Yeah.
I know, but that's essentially the protocol. Anything else, board members?
Move to adjourn.
Hey, thanks a lot. Beautiful. Motion
Mr.
is to
Chairman, can I
adjourn.
just-
Thank you all. Oh, sorry. What?
Just one thing, talking about town meeting, if any of you have an opportunity to go and tour the Nantucket Inn, there's an article I
Oh.
think you're probably all aware of
Right.
about the possible purchase of that. I had an opportunity to go last week and it was very enlightening, and I think, that's going to be open for people to go see. So if you have an opportunity, get informed before town meeting.
Is that just open, or do you need to contact someone to make it happen?
Contact. I can get some information to you.
If you
I
could-
think Brian Sullivan's organizing
There's
it.
Anna Kutzba just wrote to the housing stakeholder list saying on the 21st, I believe, that at 10:30 in the morning, or the 20th, one of those,
Huh.
I can send it to you,
Yeah.
but if there's others already set up, it may just be good to know what the list is, then maybe you can plug in.
Yeah. No, that'd be
Then
good,
we-
yeah.
Then we won't have to notice it as a public meeting.
Right.
Oh.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it probably
Well,
is.
that's good.